Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Dan Shepard. I'm joined by Lily Padman.
Silly Padman.
Lily Silly Padman. We have two brainiacs on today, Lee Hood and Nathan Price. Lee Hood is a pioneer of personalized and precision medicine, National Medal of Science winner, and one of the fathers of the Human Genome Project. Multi-award-winning systems biologist researcher and professor turned chief scientific officer of Thorne Health Tech. They have a new book out right now called The Age of Scientific Wellness, Why the Future of Medicine is Personalized, Predictive, Data-Rich, and in Your Hands. Now, this was kind of fun because we are in such fear of AI. We've been talking a lot about our AI fears lately.
Yeah.
And this is one of the areas where AI is going to be very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff happening and on the horizon that will change medicine for sure.
Dramatically, yeah. Like younger generations may never even have the illnesses to fight to begin with.
Yeah.
All about prevention. It's incredible. Please enjoy Lee Hood and Nathan Price.
He's an armchair expert.
Gentlemen, welcome. How are you?
We're good.
You're presumably coming from Seattle, Lee?
I'm from Seattle.
Okay, since 91?
92, but you're close.
Okay, great. And I'll even suggest some literature on you is wrong that exists online. And then Nathan, where are you from?
I'm in New York.
So you've both traveled here to LA. Are you staying in the same location?
We aren't, because I was going to have dinner with my daughter last night, but she transported kids that got COVID, and we decided we would not have dinner together.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
What does she do down here?
She's a lawyer. She has a firm on discrimination and employment law.
Oh.
And they're merging with a very big San Francisco firm. She's going to take over the whole thing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You're so proud.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
wonderful.
nice.
Rob and or Monica may need her services at some point.
I have a bone to pick with my
there'll probably be a
employer.
wrongful termination.
Yeah.
Well, if you get her on your side, you're one up on anybody else.
Okay, I'll keep that in my back pocket. We have a friend in common.
Oh, you do?
Well, we
Bill
all do.
Gates.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we've
Yeah.
interviewed him a few times and we really adore him.
Isn't he something, though?
He is. Your work and even the first chapter of your book speaks to this, but I think of him as the second coming of Rockefeller in the sense that Rockefeller really funded so much of our medical advancement in trying to get a unified curriculum around the country in these different medical schools.
The Flexner Report was funded basically by Rockefeller. That catalyzed the first big revolution in American medicine.
Yeah, and the things he tackled, too, were not sexy, like hookworm. I'm going to eradicate hookworm from the U.S. and put a ton of money into that, and it's just fascinating.
We didn't live then. It could have been really sexy.
Hookworm?
Yeah, like we don't know what the state of things were then.
Well, this may ring a close bell to you. You know, at the time, it was just rumored, the stereotype was that Southerners were lazy as hell.
Yeah, I don't
And it's
like
because
that.
like 30% of them were suffering from hookworm, which made you exhausted because your body was fighting this crazy
I think
bacteria.
I have it.
You might have it, yeah. It's because y'all didn't wear shoes. So
really
Rockefeller
tired.
had to teach y'all how to wear shoes. This was one of
sure.
the big things. And take some iodine. And then, Nathan, let's just catch up with you for a second.
Yeah.
You are the chief scientific officer at Thorne.
Yes, that is correct.
I feel like I have some Thorne supplements. Do they make supplements?
You probably do. So Thorne makes supplements. They've been a company in that space for about 10 years. And then what they really want to do is to expand and become a scientific wellness company focused on healthy aging. When they reached out to me because of the work that's in the book, really that became around, all right, how do we take testing, AI, plus the supplements? And they make about 300 different ones, so they're not married to any particular compound.
Yes.
But you want to know, how do you deploy all the resources in the natural world so that you can make a difference in improving people's health and do that in an intelligent way?
Yeah, and I don't know if Huberman's secretly on the books, but he's the one who recommended me like 3 or 4 of the different Thorne supplements.
Yeah, Huberman used us a lot, and we actually supported his podcast in the really early days. And I
Okay.
remember I was on the phone with Andrew. At that point, to me, it was some professor at Stanford that I'd never heard of saying, I'm going to start this podcast. It's going to be huge and amazing. And I'm like, good luck, cool. And like 4 years later, I'm like, please let me on your podcast for the love of God.
Yes. Okay, so let's start first with a brief history of medicine in this country, which is where we start in the book. Talk to us about what was happening at the turn of the century, beginning of the 1900s. Why were we dying? What were the causes? And how did we treat those?
In the 1900s, infectious disease was the big rage. Children were especially devastated by it. But the real story at that time is almost all of the medical schools, both in the U.S. and in Canada, were trade schools. There was no formal education of the MDs. It was all an apprenticeship kind of thing. There was no marriage of research or science to healthcare. And it was in approximately 1910 that Flexner was asked to do a report on the 155 medical schools, both in Canada and the U.S. And he went to many of them. One after another, when he went there, he saw there was no training, there was no science. It was very much a cult of personalities of the individual that existed in the medical school. And he wrote this devastating report that said this is all really nonsense. And he made two major points. I mean, he had a lot of specificity in it. But one was that medicine should be based in science. And the second was that there should be formal scientific training of medical students. And of course, anytime you propose a big paradigm change, the question is, how do you get the system to do it?
Yeah.
And that was where Rockefeller came in, because they had encouraged him to write this report. And once he did, and they saw what a devastating challenge it represented, they started putting substantial money into encouraging selected medical schools to begin the revolution. And Hopkins, for example, was one that very early jumped in, saw the power of bringing science and bringing medical education.
They had a legitimate curriculum. They were the only ones doing it. And then by weird coincidence, Flexner's brother-in-law is at Johns Hopkins at that time or something.
Yeah.
That's so weird. And then Rockefeller, right, all these schools, these 150 schools, he basically said, I'll give you endowments if you adopt this curriculum and have these standards.
In the discussion we have today, we're facing exactly the same thing, because we'll be talking about a revolution from a disease-focused healthcare to a wellness and prevention healthcare. And that's even a bigger paradigm change in some ways than what went before, because the whole system is totally invested in disease, and profit is only focused on disease. You don't make money with wellness or prevention.
So back in the 1900s, when Flexner did this report, 1 in 3 children are dying, and they're dying of either diarrhea, what are a couple of the other?
Well, infectious disease,
Pneumonia.
of one sort or another.
Obviously, they made a lot of strides in the 20th century. We did pretty good at finding and fixing, identifying pathogens, coming up with treatments for them. And for a long period, we were making quite a bit of progress in reducing at least the amount of infant mortality.
Absolutely.
Tuberculosis was in the top 3 or 4 at that time,
And it's still pretty high these days.
Is it?
Well, with the drug-resistant form. Yeah.
Okay, so then in the 20th century, the big breakthroughs were antibiotics and vaccines.
And public health. Good water, chlorination of water made a profound difference.
Right. We cover some ground. We proved to be very effective once this system is in place, and we pat ourselves on the back. Now we're at another crossroads, which is we have been successful at tackling those diseases, but now we're in an era of chronic diseases. And just to paint a picture of the amount of money behind all this, we're spending $600 billion on prescriptions in the U.S. And how effective are these prescriptions?
So a little under 10% of the people respond effectively.
Did you hear this?
Oh my God.
No, you got to really
So
hone into these.
90% have all the side effects of the drugs, plus the cost, no benefits.
90%.
that
They
is-
listed of the top 10 highest grossing prescriptions in the U.S., the best of them, 1 in 4 people have relief from the symptoms. But as bad as 1 in 25. There's some pretty popular medicines where only 1 in 25 people are helped from the medicine. The whole picture is pretty disheartening when you see it mapped out like this. And as you point out in the first chapter, even the ones that are successful, let's take Humira. That's a great one. I was on it for a period. I have psoriatic arthritis, chronic illness. It is pretty effective as compared to a lot of the other options. Like 1 in 4 people will have a reduction. But the drug itself is only trying to mitigate the
inflammation.
Yes. There's no effort being made really to eradicate the cause.
Fixing the symptom.
Yeah, it's just mitigating symptoms.
Correct.
And if you think about that from an economic point of view, it is the ideal situation, right? If you are running a company that's maximizing profit, you want something that treats symptoms that you have to take every day in order to stay alive. That's an incredible business model.
Ideally a few times a day.
Ideally a few times a day. Yeah, exactly.
A compound with a very short shelf life that you have to constantly re-up. And then also another thing that'll be disheartening is the whole system all in, $4 trillion a year.
I saw that.
$4 trillion.
That's not even a number I can wrap my head around. That's not a real number, but it is.
Yeah, what does that account for as a percentage of our GDP?
18 to 19%
of GDP is spent on healthcare.
Move one step further and know that 86% of that $4 trillion is spent on chronic diseases. And you know what the focus of the problem is right there.
Okay, so 86% of this enormous pile of money is going to chronic diseases that we're only looking to mitigate symptoms at this point. Or primarily that's what the focus is in the expenditure?
I think that's correct. I mean, if you take something like Alzheimer's, where it's a classic example, over the last 14, 15 years, they've probably had 500 unsuccessful clinical trials, mostly focus on amyloid or tau proteins that the establishment believed were the heart and cause of Alzheimer's, and probably they're a consequence of rather than a cause of. But if you think about those 500 tests at $1 billion to $3 billion per clinical trial, you can see the effort that's been put into chronic disease with no amelioration whatsoever. And Nathan, do you want to talk about the recent study that's been done and where it stands?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to dive into Alzheimer's at this point.
Of course we do.
So we've been doing a lot of work on the science of Alzheimer's disease and really believe that most of the period of time over the last several decades that we have focused on amyloid as the cause of Alzheimer's, that has been wrong. And so what we've done over the last 3 years is to build what's called a digital twin type model. So what you're doing is you're trying to represent computationally how the brain maintains itself. How does it stay alive? And we've taken data from about 950 papers in order to reconstruct this. And then we've run simulations for 10 million digital twins of patients. And what this lets us do is to evaluate different mechanisms that we can look at the molecular level. But because we can simulate cognition now over the course of a lifetime, we can then look at the population of the digital twins and compare them to the actual population to see if different mechanisms explain what we see in the hospital or not. And so we've done this, and we can actually reproduce a huge amount of the data out there now around the following mechanism. So some of the things that we really think about in the brain are your brain consumes 20% of your body's energy. And it's 2% of your biomass. So it's 10 times more metabolically active than an average part of your body.
Oh, wow. Let's just think on that for 1 second. That's good. So it's only 1/10 of your mass. Is that
2%.
2%.
2% of your body mass,
2%.
and it's 20% of your body's energy. It's an expensive organ. And in fact, in studies where they do starvation of mice or animal models, you can watch, and it will shift energy away from your peripheral limbs first. And the very two last organs that it will save is the heart and the brain. And if it pushes to the very limit, it prioritizes the brain.
Over the heart.
The brain's in charge, right?
Yeah. It helps when you're making the decisions.
bias.
If you're the one in charge.
If you're picking teams, isn't it? Shockingly, you're always on the good team.
Shockingly, the brain presents itself as the priority.
Yeah.
So it's a huge energy hog. So what that means is that every second of every day, you've got to be feeding energy up to your brain for it to stay alive. It can be pulling from food you eat or fat stores or wherever, but you have to use energy. So what happens as you get older is that you lose the ability to perfuse oxygen into your brain. It goes down with time. That's why exercise is so protective to Alzheimer's disease and virtually everything else, right?
Yeah.
So as you get older, and this is all measured, then that ability to perfuse oxygen throughout your brain goes down, and it's not evenly distributed in your brain. So certain regions get low.
There's a priority list within the areas of the brain?
Yeah, or just the way the blood vessels are distributed.
Okay.
So some parts are just harder to push into than others.
Got you.
And then there was a clinical trial that came out last year, and they had done 8 years of PET scans. So you can look at metabolism in the brain. And what they saw was that there were these areas of hypometabolism or low metabolism, as it's called, so low energy, that were the first regions where you'd get Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
Alzheimer's always in the same location in the brain?
There are certain locations where it's more prevalent. It's not always the same,
Okay.
but there are regions that it's more likely to happen, like the cortex, for example.
The frontal lobe?
You can get it in the frontal lobe. You can get frontal lobe dementia in the cerebellum. So your neurons have to make enough energy to stay alive. So they have a certain demand, and then they have a supply. Supply's got to be higher than demand. And so as long as you're in that regime, you're fine. Now, as you get into lower oxygen, that becomes harder. So you start having this decrease to where the amount of energy that you can produce is not enough to keep those neurons alive, so they start to die. As your neurons die, as you try to maintain cognition, it pushes the demand up on the remaining neurons. So their floor is going up, and because of the oxygenation, their ceiling is coming down, and so you get this cascade of changes. Now, as that happens, as you start losing the neurons, you start losing synapses, you go below a threshold where you can't do something that's called Hebbian learning. This is what fires together, wires together. It's how your brain learns. And so as that goes down below a certain threshold, you start losing your cognitive abilities. So the brain actually has to recruit additional synapses to keep functioning. And so it has to secrete a molecule to recruit synapses. And in recent studies, one of the things that's come out is, what is that molecule? Amyloid beta. So amyloid beta, rather than being the cause of Alzheimer's.
Right. It was correlated, but it was the chicken, not the egg.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's even a little worse than that because it's part of the brain responding. So if you go into models and you clear out amyloid,
Try to minimize.
what does the brain immediately do? It immediately starts secreting amyloid again, unless you've solved the underlying issue.
Right.
It was really confusing for a long time because there are genetic signals that point towards amyloid. And amyloid can have a negative effect. So one of the things it can do is amyloid can embed in blood vessels, which constricts your oxygen, which feeds back into that central mechanism. And there's all kinds of complexity, of course, that we're not diving into. But what we saw was that you could start hanging all of this data around this central hypothesis, which we turned into a quantitative model. So it has to simulate all of this at the same time. And then we simulated brain health over the lifespan for 10 million people. And what we saw was that population from this mechanism looked very much like what we could see. So if we put in there mechanisms like there are genetics. So if you have ApoE4, you're at high risk for late onset Alzheimer's, and ApoE2 protects you. And we can simulate those mechanisms in the brain, and it immediately shows that people with ApoE4 would get Alzheimer's earlier.
Right.
So half of those people, if they have 2 copies, will have Alzheimer's by the time they're 70. If you have 2, 80% of people won't have Alzheimer's by the time they're 90. So big effects.
Whoa. We had a psychiatrist that's a professor at Harvard on with a book proposing that all mental health disorders are really metabolic disorders. And this seems to work in concert with what you're saying.
That's very much in line with what we're seeing. I wouldn't go to all because I just haven't studied all.
Yeah.
But is it a massive factor? The number one fact that I mentioned about the brain is it is a massive energy hog.
Right.
So that always comes up. It has to solve that. And if you can't solve that, it's going to cause problems in many, many ways.
Okay, now this maybe gets into at least one of the descriptors when I look you up, which is you're a systems biologist.
Yes.
So would I be right to assume that most people have become specialists? Even if you're a neurologist, you probably specialize in some area of the brain, and you can drill down deeper and deeper and deeper, but that maybe there's fewer people dedicated to looking how the whole thing's working together. And is that what a systems biologist does? And how rare are you folks?
So systems biology was extremely rare at the beginning. In fact, many people consider Lee the father of systems biology. He's probably the first systems biologist by some accounts.
Really?
Started the first institute. He could tell you all about that. Partly, if you think about systems biology, which is taking all these pieces together, it is a reaction to molecular biology where you were building up all the pieces. But now you want to know how do the pieces fit together and how do they give all the emerging, what we call phenotypes, all the things you would care about. How do you think? How do you move? How do you have energy? Why do you not? And so forth is all a process of how those things interact. And so I really grew up in this interdisciplinary world where I was studying systems biology from the beginning. then that was really only made possible because of Lee, who had invented that as a field, as he's 40 years older than me. Sometimes people ask, well, where were you when Lee did this? I'm like, I was in kindergarten.
Right. Being frustrated with my phenotypical expression of my athleticism or this or that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was in kindergarten building models of the brain.
But the other thing, right on top of Alzheimer's being a metabolic disease, is that then gets you to start thinking about therapies that deal with diet, therapies that deal with exercise, therapies that deal with stress. I mean, it's all a part of this system.
Yeah.
And those are all major factors. And we're coming to realize how important things are. In the model that Nathan talked about, one of the things that had the biggest impact on delaying Alzheimer's in these individuals was exercise. And it was strikingly better than any drug.
This is also the case with mild to moderate depression. Exercise 3 times a week as a preventative is much higher success rate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing that it's a metabolic condition, then we would go further upriver, right? What are the organs that we most want to bolster? So your heart, obviously, everything that pulls oxygen out of the air, puts it in your bloodstream and delivers the oxygen to your brain anywhere else, seems like that would be maybe step one.
And the things you do that increase the delivery of oxygen to the brain, like exercise, are really important.
Well, I am forgetting his name.
I know,
which
he's the
is-
most beautiful guy, too.
It's just upsetting.
Yeah, we suck.
But he was a big proponent of the keto diet because very specifically how it relates to, epilepsy was sort of how it started. Yeah, these metabolic disorders.
The best pharmacological response to it is like 50% success rate, but that people on a keto diet will have like 87% or something really drastically high relief from epilepsy through that diet. Chris Palmer. Thanks, Wavi. Okay, so because you're looking at the whole system and we're entering a new era in which we're going to have great help and assistance in monitoring ourselves, I think it would be a fun time to let people know that you're one of the fathers of the Genome Project. Were you working with Eric Landner by chance?
We worked together on the Genome Project, yes.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating, gentlemen. But cracking the genome was supposed to be the end of everything. In essence, right? We were all so excited that if we knew the exact building blocks and we knew our own individual building blocks, that from that would come all these treatments and all these specialized medicines, perhaps. But of course, that was going to be kind of unachievable because what would you have? One human dedicated to another human's health? It would be too much for a doctor, wouldn't it, to know entirely what's going on with somebody?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what bits of information do we now have and what new technology is emerging that can help us get a fuller picture and learn to treat our body as a really complex system and do things upriver?
Well, I think we've gained enormously sophisticated techniques with systems biology in terms of being able to take very different kinds of data and integrate them together. And in the integrating of data that tell you about the different organs in your body and the inside and the outside of your body and your brain and so forth, as you integrate those data sets together, in a sense, what you're doing is you're recreating the organism and setting it up so you can make predictions about the organism and where it's going. And Nathan has played a major role in developing some of the computational techniques for doing this kind of thing. But I think the really important point that's become very clear is you cannot understand the subtleties and complexities of a human being if you study populations and average things together. What you have to do is you have to look at one person at a time.
Oof.
You have to gather in each of their data and you have to assemble it because that data is a reflection of what you are. And the extent to which you can interpret and integrate it and understand it, you'll come to understand the person. And I think one of the most powerful tools in the future for dealing with this complexity is going to be AI and the large language models and hyperscale AI kinds of things. And there are two visions which I have for the future of AI. One vision as we carry out the Human Phenome Initiative. It's basically the idea we take 1 million people, and over a 10-year period, we analyze their genome and their phenome. That will do 3 really important things. One, it'll increase the quality of healthcare enormously. So as a model system to validate that, it's really important. And 2, it's going to show that we can save trillions of dollars in cost for the healthcare system. And 3, what it's going to generate, because this encompasses your entire body, are little vignettes called actionable possibilities that if you carry them out, either let you improve your wellness or avoid disease. And these actionable possibilities come from statistical correlations in the data that we can then go to the literature and validate these basic underlying actionable possibilities. Well, with this 1 million person project, we may have 10,000 of those. And there's no way any physician could begin to understand the diversity of ways that we can improve your health. So what AI will have to do is, 1, send a message for each of these actionable possibilities to a physician that's appropriate for their patient and explain what it is.
So the AI will do some analysis. It'll make a recommendation, but that is turned over to an actual physician.
It's turned over to a physician. But the other thing AI has to do, because physicians are appropriately skeptical types, is it has to validate why this possibility is real. So both of those things will change the fundamental role of a physician, because you will then become the master of every field of medicine.
Yeah.
You'll have 10,000 possibilities at your beck and call, where you can do the brain, or you can do diabetes, or you can do aortic stenosis. You'll be an expert in virtually every aspect of medicine through the AI. The second thing is, we're going to take these large language models, and we want to take one and educate it only about medicine, so it doesn't get into conspiracy theories and all the other things the internet drag in. And once it's properly trained and we can put in very large knowledge graphs that relate genes to diseases, to drugs, to all these different kinds of things. And once we put in the information from digital twins like the one Nathan described for Alzheimer's, and once we put in the entire literature of biology, PubMed it's called, then you'll have an educated system. And our hope is we'll be able to take your genome and phenome data, as complex as it is, and put it into that large language model and have it identify the gaps and insufficiencies and new kinds of opportunities for growth and avoidance of disease, and come out with a prioritized list of actionable possibilities for you that will transform your life entirely.
That.
What we learned about the first 100 years of consolidated medicine we had in the 20th century till now is we're going to have to shift focus from treating to preventing, a transition from disease to wellness.
Ultimately, it's going to be focused on 2 things: how to optimize your wellness, how to prevent any transition to disease.
To keep you out of ever needing a treatment.
And see, that'll be the biggest revolution ever in the history of medicine.
Yeah.
To keep everyone healthy as opposed to treat people who are sick.
Well, and the major idea is we want your health span, the number of years you're mentally agile and physically capable, to extend out to your lifespan, and both of those to go into your 90s and 100s. And suppose you can be fully functional, both physically and mentally, at 90.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to want to have retired 40 years earlier.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So
yes.
This gets into the sociology of what do you do with those extra 30 years? And they're not just an extra 30 years, they're an extra 30 functional years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the question is, how do we deal with things like education and jobs? Your job may decay away,
Exactly.
so you need to be able to go get another job when you're 60, because we're not going to be retiring you at 65 or 70 when you're going to live to be 100 plus.
Is there an overpopulation concern?
Well,
I mean, really,
all those things are working in parallel to also the raising of the standard of living, which reduces birth rates.
There's a book called The Empty Planet that discusses the fact all the countries of the developed nations are below replacement population, and the country that in many ways is most strikingly so is China. The other thing they point out is once you've gotten below that, it is unbelievably difficult to reverse that. Mm-hmm. And you know what the most important single factor is in bringing down that birth rate? It's the emancipation of women. It's all of a sudden women, they're educated, they want to have their own jobs, they don't want to be subservient. Japan, many young professional scientists and so forth don't want to touch marriage or anything like that. And the prediction overall from the book is within the next 10 years, we'll start to turn around and we'll see a decrease in the population. What's going to happen to China if it doesn't have all these young people that can pump into these jobs, or any of us?
Well, we're used to, most countries are aiming for a 2% growth annually, and you're going to be seeing a very predictable and precipitous loss every year.
There's no country that's gaining population strikingly.
In a decreasing population, you then have decreasing consumption.
You're going to see this spiral downward in some way.
So having older, healthy population who still wants to consume things and have recreational hobbies will maybe help, because those people pretty much left the marketplace conventionally.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
The other bonus with this attitude, if you think about it, is in general, as we grow older, we accumulate wisdom, but that wisdom's usefulness is terminated by our brain deficiencies. If we can put together experience and wisdom with functionality, then you have the ideal world where you gain enormous in creativity and productivity. And maybe that's one of the ways you can begin to make up for this decreasing replacement population.
Okay, so I think maybe a very easy example to give of genotypical and phenotypical responses would be if you can imagine there is a fetus, and the fetus is XY. It is genotypically a male, right? Its DNA says it's going to be a male. And then mom, for whatever reason, she accidentally starts taking a testosterone blocker. Accidentally. She's supposed to be sending testosterone to the fetus that activates the ovaries distending and becoming gonads. That doesn't happen. The baby comes out, and the baby could come out phenotypically female. We would look at the baby and say there's a vagina, there's no penis, there's no testicles. So it could be genotypically male, but phenotypically female, just by arresting the mother's development of testosterone. So similarly, we all have, sure, our DNA, we have the recipe, but all these environmental factors happen along the way that prevent some genes from getting expressed, or all these different things. So just having what we're supposed to be isn't really the full picture, is it? We have all these tremendous environmental things that are interacting with our DNA.
Let me explain what the phenome is, because I think you've hit it right on. So the phenome is how we look all the way across our developing life. So in a sense, if we take snapshots of you, we have an infinite number of phenomes. And the way we can assess the phenome is to look at blood components. We can look at the gut microbiome. We can look at digital health factors and many other kinds of things. And they begin to give us explanations for how your phenome has changed. But when you look at it most deeply at the highest level, the phenome is the responsibility of three factors. It's your genome, it's your behavior, and it's your environment. And all of those play incredibly important roles.
Yeah, and the percentages we don't really know yet, right? Historically, we've had this nature-nurture debate, and more everyone's like, no, they're one thing.
And it depends on what your environment is. That is, your environment under ideal circumstances may play a relatively modest role in your health. But if you were in Hiroshima when it got bombed, you had massive radiation damage that's strictly environmental, and you had that for the rest of your life.
Right. But knowing that you have your DNA, But then you have all these other factors and variables. A, it's too much for even the individual to keep track of. Then to have in your mind at all times, at this stage, we need some computer assistance. It would be too much.
Well, with the phenome, that's exactly what we can give you because we can track the genome, the behavior, and the environment beautifully. The one we don't measure very well today because it is so complicated is the environment. But more and more effort is being put into that.
You have to take that complexity, which is massive, right? When you start talking about genome, environment, all these things, no person can get their mind wrapped around it. No doctor can get their mind wrapped around it, right? There's no chance. So you have to build these things into a system. Just to come back to the example of the digital twin with Alzheimer's, because we talked about all the mechanisms, but it actually tells you things about what you can do. You can put in your genes, the genes that affect Alzheimer's disease. You can put in different blood measures and things of this nature. And then it will run a simulation of expected cognitive ability over the course of life. It will then recommend a series of interventions. Could be exercises, and certain exercises actually work a little better than others. There's a recent study that suggested anything where you jump up and down a lot. You get like the blood kind of pumping that way. It's particularly good. I have a trampoline in my living room, so I was excited about that.
Sure. You're one step ahead.
Another element might be when we run the simulations and the metabolism as it goes down, one compound that becomes rate limiting is phosphatidylcholine. You can supplement with it, but it's also just in eggs. It literally runs out. So when we saw that in the model, we then looked in the nutrition literature and just asked the question, do people who eat diets rich on phosphatidylcholine get Alzheimer's later than people who don't? And we go look it up, and it turns out, about 3 years later on average. And we think we can push that to about 5. Now, what you can do with the model is you can look at all those different axes: exercise, phosphatidylcholine, vitamin D plays a role, inflammation plays a role, stress plays a role. So there's all these different axes. But then what it will do is from your measurements, it will make an estimate, and it will tell you what percentile of a responder we think you are to every single one of them.
Oh, wow.
And then it can make a prediction that will show, if you do these things, what is the expected benefit? And these are all probabilities. Nothing's set in stone, but it will push how far in advance do we think you can push off what would be your expected time of dementia and so forth. So this is a capability that's just come on board that we've got now in the last few weeks. How we've really put it into a visualization engine so that, we can use this.
I'm glad you mentioned vitamin D because I keep wanting to bring up vitamin D because I was thinking even in the simplest terms, I have psoriatic arthritis, okay? I have a prescription, and originally for Humira, it's the same prescription everyone would get no matter where they're at in the world, no matter what their genes are. It's baseline. But it doesn't ask me where do I live in America. What amount of vitamin D am I getting naturally? This is a huge component that varies so greatly on what latitude you're on, and it's not really being asked by a doctor. It's not really in the mix when we're coming up with any kind of solutions. It's one of the many variables that would be helpful for some model to incorporate.
Absolutely. And so you can do measurements of it so you can see what your actual level is. If you're trying to guess at it, so we did measurements in our Pioneer 100 study that Lee and I did, and we found 91% of the people that we looked at were deficient in vitamin D. Now that was taken in Seattle, although when they do geographic analyses, it's a lot more than that because even right now, we're sitting indoors. Our ancient ancestors would have been walking around on the plane. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm red from about here up because we went on a hot air balloon yesterday.
Wait, you two went on a hot air balloon?
Yeah, Lee and I
This
did
is
yesterday.
fucking adorable. Where did this happen? Here in Los Angeles?
Los Olivos, which is a little
Oh, yeah.
How lovely.
We were doing an event out there.
And it is spectacular. I'd recommend it for anybody who has even an ounce of adventure in them.
Oh, you'd love it.
Was that your first hot air balloon ride?
First one.
Oh my God, I'm so
never
happy.
done
And you know what was so cool is how important it is to find the various levels of wind that go very different directions when you're coming down. Because you want to land at a certain place, but you have no control.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to go up and down and find it.
There's all these
Deposit
stratas.
yourself and then suddenly go down.
You really get a sense of the inversion too, because you're going up and it's pretty cool. And then you cross a threshold and instantly it's like 85 degrees. It's hot.
It goes
wow.
from 60 to 85 degrees.
Yeah, because it was trapping all the clouds
That's
underneath.
crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
I grew up in an area of Michigan where they were flown a lot, and they would regularly land in our backyard. They would miss their bullseye.
spot.
Yes,
Oh,
and I
God.
was asked often as a young kid if I could help ballast it. Like they couldn't get it to
Catch
set
it?
down. Yes, so I've not gone all the way up, but I've drifted across my backyard probably a dozen times.
You've just
as a
been
kid.
hanging from it?
Yeah, you just come and jump on the side and help them get
Bring
it
it down.
Yes. I did that a bunch of times. It was
It's like
slow.
you grew up in the
Fairy tale?
1850s or something.
The Zeppelin era, the dirigible era.
So let me give you my own personal experience with vitamin D to show you it's a little bit more complicated than what we've discussed. So I was one of the 91% in the study Nathan mentioned, and I was really low. So I started taking the typical dose to boost things up, 1,000 international units, and it did nothing for a period of a month or so. And then it turned out I had 2 variant genes, each of which blocked the uptake of vitamin D.
There you go.
And the only way I could get around that is to take mega doses of vitamin D. So I took 15,000 international units, and now I maintain with 5,000 international units. So not only do you have to measure the level of vitamin D, you have to know something about your genetics as well. And that's why I'm saying in this new medicine, we are going to have this integrative systems view that says
You're going to need
low,
15x.
but you can't do it with 1,000 international units. You do it with 15,000 international. So the whole question of, is it just simply sun, becomes much more complicated then.
Surely. But I remember, because I have this psoriatic arthritis sitch, people with that track very low on vitamin D. But then it becomes the same thing you were talking about in Alzheimer's. Is the low vitamin D a response of the inflammation, or does the low vitamin D help create the inflammation? You get into this chicken or an egg, which one is a byproduct of the condition and which one is causal to the condition?
You absolutely do. And that's why when you find correlations, it's a hint, right? Things that are causal are correlative, but not necessarily the vice versa.
Yes.
The other really interesting thing from these digital twin simulations we've done, we'll often look at like, what's the effect of taking vitamin D? And the answer will be like virtually nothing. And what's the effect of taking an anti-inflammatory? All these different things in singular for a lot of people are very small. But when you start doing combinations of them, you start stacking it, all of a sudden the effect size goes from, it's going to delay it for a decade or 15 years, you hit critical mass. Because the problem is, because everything is a system, and it's an issue also with how we do clinical trials, because we always look at one variable. The news report will say, none of this stuff really matters. But at least in this and this is a very new capability, the digital twins. I have not actually seen another digital twin version that is operational yet. When you start looking at those things, what happens is, because it's a systems problem, there's all these different issues. So you solve one, but you just hit the next block, right? And then you do that in the next block. But as soon as we start putting them together, you just see this breakthrough when all of a sudden, at least in the simulated mechanism, is it start making a big difference. And we'll be doing a prospective clinical trial.
Each step has an impact on the other step.
Yeah.
So by going up in 10%, then baseline across the board, all those start functioning 10% better because it's all working together.
Exactly. Everything's interlocked. So if you fix one gear, but there are 4 other gears that are broken, the contraption isn't going to turn. But if you fix them all, then it does.
I just go straight to mechanical things. Like, there are so many issues in an engine.
It's exactly the same kind of thing. The really important thing is these chronic diseases that we were talking about, all of them are going to require multiple therapies. So the whole question is, how can you do clinical trials where you look at 5 different things?
Yes.
And we've got to start rethinking the classic approaches to clinical trials. Because if you do the 5 one at a time, the report will be nothing.
Yeah.
Right? You miss the essential point of you have to add them together.
The other thing that's really important about that is your 5 isn't my 5, isn't Monica's 5. And so one of the things that you can do in these clinical trial settings then is don't test a compound. Test the algorithm. So if you take, for example, something like these digital twin models that we have, you're going to test that. So what you'll do is you'll use that algorithm on a per person basis, and then you will take what, through the AI systems and the digital twins, it says is the best thing for that person.
Yeah.
And then you evaluate that group against a control group. But every single person in that trial might have done something different. You're not testing a drug. You're testing a system of intelligence that operates on many things at the same time.
Yeah, so if I go see a doctor here in Los Angeles who's seen, I don't know what the number would be, let's say they see 2,000 patients in their lifetime. That's kind of their data set that they've had experience with. Whereas if I'm using AI, I put in all my stuff. I'm 6'3". I was asthmatic. You just add all these things. And within LA, there might only be 2 other people that got the same setup as me. But globally, and with AI, it could be observed. We could find the 2,500 other people that are, yes, my cohort. And what has worked on my cohort is something AI can do in 1 second. Eventually, it can scan the globe and it can put me in a group that would be most predictive of a course of action for me.
Yeah. If you have something that's simulating mechanism, so you think you know what's the underlying biology, for example, the 10 million digital twins, that's a mapping across the space so that when a person comes in and we say, who is this person like? You map them into who are the twins that are closest to them. And then the more information you get, the more granular you can be, the more accurate you can be.
Because for a woman who gets the BRCA, they do 23andMe and they find out they have the BRCA gene, right? I don't know what percentage of the pie that would be, but minimally it's not more than, 30% of the pie?
Yeah, I think it's less. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah,
it's less than that.
It's much less than that.
It's less than that, right.
But I don't remember what the
So
Wait, what do
now
you
we
mean?
need to look.
The pie, but breast cancer?
Yes, like what will ultimately lead
yes.
to breast cancer. It's a part of it, but it's maybe 1/5 of the part, or maybe it's 1/8. And now we find out 4 other things about this woman. Now we have 6 of the 8 data points that we compare to everyone else. And now we have a really good idea of what predictions we can make.
And, the cool thing is Nathan said, once you've identified a conceptual twin that's very close to you, you can use that twin to make all sorts of experiments to see how you can be optimized.
Right.
Because the twin will have all the data that we've gathered from everywhere, whereas on you, we'll have a very limited amount of data by comparison.
Yeah.
So we can use twins to extrapolate into areas we have no knowledge about. I think medicine is going to be profoundly changed by digital twins.
It's fascinating, though, because it goes back to that age-old ethical, if you could walk into a body scan and it could tell you absolutely everything about yourself, would you want to know that? We're here. This is what we're essentially saying.
Yeah, the bigger question is like asking people, if we could tell you exactly when you were going to die, would you want to know? That's like
right, because there's some element of that, right? Like, you can get this many more years or you can't.
There is an element to that, and we've been using Alzheimer's as an example a lot today, because that's one of the issues that came up when the genomes first got out to people, and 23andMe was getting it out to consumers and Ancestry and these groups. That was always the line in the press. Was, you don't want to find out about these things because it will scare you and there's nothing you can do.
Right.
And the thing that always drove me nuts was that there's nothing you can do. There's no drug that you can take that will cure you. But there's definitely things you can do. And the other issue I want to come back to, which you pointed out before, the critical difference between thinking about wellness and prevention and disease. If you think about the problem, the challenge of curing Alzheimer's, your neurons have died.
Right.
Your synapses are gone. All the encoding of memories, which is incredibly complicated.
Your brain doesn't go through mitosis. It doesn't repair. Yeah.
How are you bringing that back? That is a sci-fi. The notion that there's a small molecule drug that you're going to take.
No, you need a time machine.
If you had a time machine, that would be ideal.
Yes, it'd be preferred in this situation.
Or you need something like, Elon Musk's Neuralink and a brain map and a download. And you could think about it, but sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, you'd have to replace the damaged components of your brain with something digital.
Incredibly hard. Prevention.
Yeah.
Don't let your neurons get into negative energy, but keep them alive. That is a challenge that is way easier.
Yeah.
Well, then we get into the much bigger and harder philosophical question, which is people seem to track towards not prevention. That's the weird human
like
hurdle.
Things that they know will help.
Preventative, yes.
Yeah,
when you tell people, if you do this, they're willing to go get a surgery. They'll have something cut off. They'll do anything to deal with the problem once it arises. But the prevention model is really hard to get people to adopt. But I think if we had the assistance of our phone tracking it, our phone reminding us, our phone setting the schedule for us, it would be easier for us to adhere to.
Well, the other thing we can really push is education. I set up an education group, 5 people to do K through 12 science education in 2000 when we started ISB. Just this year, they've finished a 4-module course on systems medicine using a textbook we're going to have published next year. Basically, this is a full, long course. It represents all the aspects of citizens medicine that one can have. And I'll argue that the students that graduate as juniors or seniors with that program will know more about medicine in the future than 95% of the physicians that are out there. Moreover, they will realize what wellness and prevention are about and be very adapted to it. So I think early education is one really key direction that we can take to start changing the whole culture of exactly what you said. We don't want touch prevention.
Yeah.
People don't understand it. But if you really understand it and you get really good examples of the difference it makes, that changes people's attitudes.
And linking it to incentivizing through you could introduce people to the costs of not doing it. People are kind of motivated by the notion that they'll either be retiring in a beautiful house in some warm area.
Also, kids are just more adaptable to hearing stuff like that. They're more malleable, I feel like. Once you're an adult and you hear
you're like, I don't have time to eat
I don't have
other
time.
than McDonald's.
I'll tell you the other thing about Alzheimer's, though, is it takes away one person's life as you go through the disease, right? It takes away a second person's life, and that's the caretaker.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Most caretakers don't have the money to do anything but spend their full time taking care of their partner. And you end up expending your retirement. It's just the most horrible situation to be in.
Yes, you've been on this journey with your wife for about 17 years now or something.
Right.
In reading the chapter where you tell us what it is like being a caretaker, and even more heartbreaking, the spouse of someone who knew her in all of her glory and all of her prime, and to watch it slowly disappear and to see the frustration on her face as she realizes what's happening.
Yeah.
A simple thing you wouldn't think of, like you loved living on a lake in Washington. And she got to a point where she's like, this is too much for me. I need to be in a small place that I can manage. And you're going to have to go along with that. And then even when we get there, there's going to be now more problems. And you really get a sense of how impactful it is on, the caretakers. And often there's many caretakers whose lives are altered. It's a uniquely cruel disease.
But the other point I'd make, and it's really an important one, is in our family, my wife had one copy of the ApoE4 gene, and I had a copy of the ApoE4 gene. So I have to worry about it.
Is it a recessive gene?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
It has much larger effect if you have two copies, but if you have one, especially for women who are much more susceptible to Alzheimer's, you have a higher tendency toward it. But if you find yourself in your family with a member that has Alzheimer's, you ought to all be checked for the genetic propensity, because I think there are powerful preventive measures that have to do with behavior and have to do with drugs that you can take. Nathan talked about phosphorylcholine. I think in 2005, when my wife was diagnosed, I knew what I knew today. I don't think she'd be where she is. I think she'd be with us, and we could have done a preventive kind of mode. And I will say my son, for example, has two bad copies of the gene, and we've put him on a very strict preventive mode. One of the most effective aspects of it is exercise.
Well, that's the best part, is you'll be reaping the benefits of it long before.
Absolutely. And he's an ultra marathoner. He's
wow.
hunts, and he lives in Alaska, Juneau, Alaska. So he does all these physical things that are probably the best single thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
Is there a specific type of exercise or just any exertion?
I think anything that gets oxygen to the brain is really key.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you give some examples of where this AI is already assisting doctors. I think there's a couple of interesting examples. First of all, there's an alarming statistic in the book, The Age of Scientific Wellness, Why the Future of Medicine is Personalized, Data-Rich, and in Your Hands. You have this statistic in here, which is almost hard for me to believe, which is 250,000 people a year die because medical mistakes account for about 250,000 deaths annually in the U.S. alone. That seems
It's so scary.
Preposterously high.
It sounds preposterous.
It's a huge number. And if you look at these lists, so you'll see cardiovascular disease, cancers. Medical errors is one of those top several that are on there.
Oh
Wow.
Now, that is, of course, quite hidden for obvious reasons, but it is low-hanging fruit for some of the kind of things you can do with computational systems and AIs to just solve for that. So certain things, for example, a doctor who's overworked, tired, they've got a lot going on, and they have to click on a drug's name in an EHR. And some of those drugs, they're very long, complicated names. The doctor knows them well.
Can I read a few? I wrote them down from the book.
Read them.
This doctor would be probably checking between two boxes. Novolin or Novolog, vinblastine or vincristine, hydroxyazine or hydralazine. I mean, these are imperceptible when you see them written.
Yeah.
So there's way too many drugs. They're too closely named.
And doctors' scrawls are just that.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
Compounding everything.
So they're clicking this on a screen, or someone's reading the scrawl, right, or something like that. So those are all very human kinds of errors. But to a computer, to a machine, it makes no difference. Those things aren't close to them. They have a different, unique ID. And with AI, the really important thing is that if it's fed so it knows what this patient is being treated for, and then they click a very similar name, but a compound that's actually for the treatment of some other disease that the patient doesn't have, it's very easy for them to flag back to the doctor, did you actually mean this drug that is for psoriasis, or did you mean this drug that is actually for cardiovascular disease?
Yeah, there's a
simple thing to solve.
Heartbreaking example in the book of a young boy who's supposed to get prescribed
asthma, and he got a blood thinner or something.
You got a blood thinner.
Horrible example. Yeah.
But so there's this system called MedAware that is a companion for doctors that is double checking, co-piloting all of these prescriptions. And obviously their success rate has got to be in the high 90s as far as detecting that stuff.
Yes. If you're using this kind of system, then you'll be able to lower those medical errors dramatically. Because of those type of error, again, computers, for lack of a better word, think differently than we do. They're incredibly good at large number processing, and they don't never make mistakes, but they very, very rarely do. And so just taking capabilities of humans and the capabilities of computers that are so radically opposed and so radically different, since they're so orthogonal to each other, you can marry those together and you can reduce errors to a huge degree. And then you can see the numbers on that.
Well, what can the person do?
Do you hear that word?
No, I liked it. What can
Which one did I use?
Orthogonal.
Orthogonal.
Sorry,
that's a very common word in science.
I got to get hip to
perpendicular, right angle, right?
I like it.
Orthogonal, I love that.
But AI obviously is a huge conversation right now. And
in every industry.
In every industry. It's a big one right now in our industry.
Our WGA writers' strike right now is that's a big component.
Of AI issues or topic of conversation. So I can answer right now for the writers what they can do that the AI can't. So I just want you to be honest. What can the human do? Why do we still need the human?
Yeah, we all had that moment. I think the first time you used ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's scary as hell.
And it just rips out all this text and nothing flat. I'm so excited about this technology, though, I have to say. My experience with it is you can get it to write things for you, and especially when you get into GPT-4 and the more advanced, that are pretty accurate. But what I've never seen it do yet is to really surprise me. So it gives you a very good description of what's out there, and it will condense it. It can write at a very high level. I very often give it things that I write to make it a little better or spruce it up or critique it or tell me what you think is wrong about it or act as an editor that receives this as a letter and respond, would you accept this?
Yeah.
And actually, I love doing that because it'll write me an acceptance or a rejection letter to different things and give me reasons. That's pretty useful.
Yeah, it's big time.
There's all kinds of stuff you can do. What I think it puts a premium on now are a couple of different things. So one is really unique and original thought. And so we have to be thinking very creatively, humans.
Yes.
Because you have to add value to the corpus of anything that's out there. But everything that used to be, like, I'm just going to write up this blog that's going to say the same kind of thing that everyone always says, but to a different audience, I think that's going to go away.
Yeah. But in medicine specifically,
there's one thing in the chapter that's interesting is that the AI, currently at least, has some predictable issues. One is it has this hallucination phenomenon.
That's a function of what it's trained with. If you give it the internet, it's going to hallucinate all over the place because it sees conspiracy theories.
It has a sweet spot. When it cycles through the same command like over 100 times, it starts doing some weird stuff. But the primary thing that we can still do, which is really astounding, is we expect the unexpected. We do great with novel information that doesn't exist anywhere else in its previous learning. We're really adaptable when we see something new and curious. Is that still our strength that this brain does somehow shockingly well?
Absolutely. The other element that's really important is that the AI is only as good as the knowledge on which it's trained on and what it exists. So the big areas of value are, one, to have corpuses of text that are really trusted. You do what's called vectorization, but you vectorize against it, which means that you're letting your AI go, but you're telling it, here's a library of things that we've vetted that are true. Only answer if you can get the answer from this set. And that set keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then the second is to have data types. So as we get into this kind of information where we're measuring things out of our microbiomes or our blood or all these elements that you can have, so you have a lot of information about that person, you can contextualize that into the system so that when you're going into a large language model, you give it all this background context about who is this person and what is their problem. What are they really trying to solve? So that gets you into a certain location. You then pull in and load into its short-term memory, right, into its context, pieces of information from the general knowledge in the scientific and medical literature that's relevant to that. And then you let it do the personalization of the dialogue back to the patient or the individual, or to the doctor if they're still in the loop on it as an intermediary for this, depending on how sensitive it is. That really is a system that you can get a lot of delivery for. And the really amazing thing, though, is that we can take all this information from genetics, the microbiome, the blood measures, your own individual digital twin, whatever it is, the ChatGPT and so forth, can actually give that back to an individual in plain English. This world just didn't exist a very short time ago.
Yeah. Okay. So now a couple of really fascinating things on the horizon with it. I'll give kind of an inane example. So they have created algorithms that specifically exclude it to identify race, let's say to set a insurance rate policy. But the AI can figure out race quite simply. There's enough data points that ultimately it does figure out race without, quote, figuring out race. So that's a bad, nefarious example, but I'll say the good part of that, the AI, and this gets into the deep reasoning future of the AI, is it will be able to see patterns that we would never see. It will be able to link variables that we would never think to. We get caught in thought paradigms. We're in one. We're in the find it and fix it paradigm. We're trying to get into the next paradigm. So we have thinking paradigms that the AI doesn't have, and it will ultimately start exposing to us some patterns that we won't understand. This is where it gets really curious. You parallel this with aspirin in the book, which is like aspirin works. Really, we don't know why. We just know it works. And there's a whole host of things that we know it works. We don't really know why it works, and we accept that and run with it. That's our future. The AI is going to basically say, eat a grapefruit with 2 scoops of sugar, an aspirin, and jump 9 times. And that's going to work.
You'll be great.
Yes, and we're just going to have to do it.
There really is an important point about you need to know the race when you're treating patients.
Surely, yes.
And the most striking example I've seen is looking at 4 different races, each populations in them that have 2 bad copies of the Alzheimer's gene. The Japanese are 3.5 times more likely to get Alzheimer's than the Caucasians. Caucasians are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's as the African Americans, and the Hispanics don't have to worry about being homozygous at all.
Really?
These are really striking differences. Where it gets complicated is in the future, we're all going to be mixtures.
Truly, yeah.
And then we have to deconvolute the genes that are associated with those kind of differences for each individual and not for each race.
All these little things, are medically relevant, but probably not when giving someone a loan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yes. Or assessing what kind of a risk they are.
But in some ways it can help too, because there's a big issue with Black women are not getting the care that they need in medicine. And so in some ways the AI is helpful there because they're not going to have prejudices.
They can have prejudices. Curiously, it all depends on what the goal of the algorithm is.
Well, I don't think they're going to not listen.
There are 2 really distinct issues about prejudices. One is the bias from the data, that is, most of our data is Caucasian. There is a big bias. The other is the bias of the algorithm writer. And those are two different things you have to think about independently.
And it has been interesting. I think you were pointing towards this, Dax, because initially it was exactly what you said. We thought, let's get rid of all the racial information and then we'll just have an unbiased algorithm. And it's not true because it learns these things from other factors.
Yeah, it goes through your Amazon music history.
Right.
It can do that. And it goes, oh, this person listens to only R&B. Okay, that ticks, like
it's
it
like when
figures it
people
out.
try to build political models. It's like, what are your
Yes.
5 favorite TV shows? You list them, 92%, I think it is. You could predict
it's so
how
obvious.
someone votes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you want to keep all of that messy information in. You're not training on it exactly, but it's the kind of thing that clues you into that you're making a mistake. And these AIs, especially in the early days, can make the kind of mistakes that humans would never make. One of the really famous early examples was it got into a healthcare system and just said, how do we stop people from getting cardiovascular disease? And it goes through and it came up with this 99% accurate way to do it. Super amazing. What do? You just give carcinogens to everybody. Nobody dies of heart disease because they all die of cancer.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, that's great. Yeah.
So we never implement it because we understand it. So the problem is when you get into this area of, okay, AI is going to tell us stuff that we don't understand and what its motives are, especially as you look into the future, what is its capacity going to be to explain things to us? Because you look at things like the large language models, and it is quite good at, you can give it a lot of information and tell it to summarize for you. So I'm a little more optimistic than I used to be that we won't get stuck in only black box AI because we may not be able to understand or wrap our mind around the patterns. But the hope is that we can at least probe and have described to us at least the level of our intelligence.
You'd hope once it was
on.
Pointed out, we would fathom it.
At least to some degree,
Yes.
I don't know. Who knows?
But a great example of its success is a study showed that urinary bladder tumor analysis could be performed with AI at an accuracy rate of 93%, which is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, these systems, at least in certain areas, are getting to the level of humans and even in some cases better, right? And especially like the medical errors and so forth that we talked about.
Especially in imaging, where they can actually take in far more detail than a human can.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot more data in that
That's
image
correct.
than we can detect.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
One of the limitations to AI has really been that it just doesn't understand anything outside of its very narrow context, right? It doesn't understand anything about the world. The large language models, they simulate text. That's it. They don't actually understand anything about what's around. Now, they do bring in some pretty interesting capabilities, though, because even though they don't understand context, we can feed them with all kinds of information that we have derived as humans about context. And you can start to surround that around things like an imaging model. So the imaging models in the past would only be able to deal with that they saw, but you can now feed them a lot of information about what's going on in that patient's life, what are other things that are happening, and it can start to learn patterns, at least out of the language that it derives, that is related then to that. So there is an ability for it to start to have access to more and more domains.
Opinions.
Yeah, some of them are just opinions,
Yeah.
and we have to guard against that.
I'd like to take just a few minutes and talk about the stories we've received from the data about what wellness and prevention are going to be in the future.
Yeah, tell me.
So the big vision for what Nathan and I are really pushing is a very simple idea. We now have the means to follow your health trajectory in terms of data and to assess where you are and to optimize your health. That's it. And the idea is we'll follow for each person their health trajectory all the way across. And health really means three things. One, it means wellness. And the really important thing from this data-rich health we're talking about now is we can optimize enormously your wellness wherever you are. And we would guess the typical person might be 20 or 30% of their potential if you're pretty healthy. But you can really go far more. The second thing is we can now image right at the point of wellness to transition to disease that earliest detectable point. And the reason that transition is important is we think we can do it for all chronic diseases. And if we can reverse it when the disease is early and simple, you'll never get a clinically manifest disease. Wouldn't it be cool if we could block most chronic diseases in the next 10 years or so? And the third aspect of health is how we treat disease, and we can use precision medicine and things like that. But what Nathan and I did was start in 2015 a company called Aerovale that was to bring scientific wellness to consumers. And we collected 5,000 people over a 4-year period. And the results have been spectacular. We've probably got 30 papers now that have come out of analyzing that data set. In the 5,000 individuals, we saw 167 the transition from wellness to disease. And the first of the patients that did so about 2 years into the study was someone we'll call Eve, and she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, very late stage. What we did is we went back to bloods that we'd drawn prior to the time of her diagnosis and showed for all 4 of those, up to 2 years away, she had 5 proteins that were expressed at very high levels that the normal population didn't express. And 3 of those 5 mapped into disease-perturbed networks common to late-stage pancreatic cancer.
So these are like precursors of it.
Right. We had 35 people transition to cancer. We looked at 10 others, and for each, we saw the same kind of thing. With the million-person project, we'll get 200,000 transitions. So the cool thing is we'll have markers identified for the transition to virtually every chronic disease there is.
Wow.
And we'll begin to learn how to reverse the disease at that early stage. So this is a big start of beginning to save money, as well as transforming the quality for those people of life.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this utopian system that is coming, what is the current hurdle? It would seem to me that the AI would need a lot of data from you, biometrical data.
Gathering data on well people so we can see the transition.
That's the issue.
That is the real issue, because essentially no people out there have the kind of data gathered on them automatically that you need.
Are they wearing devices that help with this?
The devices probably won't help with that. I mean, Nathan might argue with me. Right now, they have no clue as to early transitions.
Surely. I guess my question to you is, let's say there's a $9.99 a month app I can get that's going to monitor all this stuff. I either have to go to Quest Lab and give my blood every 3 days. My question is, are we around the corner, or is that still the stumbling block?
We invented a device for this called the Wondery. It was actually named 2 weeks ago as MedTech's Medical Device Product of the Year, which is pretty cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did Elizabeth Holmes also win one of those?
Yeah, I really try to follow that. Yeah, exactly.
They've withdrawn.
Yeah,
She took her Heisman back?
She left an opening.
Okay.
I tried to learn a few lessons for the documentary.
Yeah, with some don'ts.
So first, do science.
Yeah.
Sure it works.
Sure. Don't use
Don't harm
Siemens
patients.
products and put your name on them.
Yes,
Pretend they're not
exactly.
Siemens products.
Pretend they're not. But this is a device that goes onto your arm, and then you push a button, creates a vacuum suction, you push another, and then it will pull blood out into a cartridge. And then you can put that into a sleeve. Now, once you do that, it's not considered a biohazard. So you can ship this in the mail.
Okay.
And so we just announced a partnership on this where we'll be generating what's called metabolomics data. So this is thousands of small molecules out of your blood that you can get off a device that's mailed to your house. It's essentially painless. On a scale up to 10, people rate it between a 0 and a 1. There's 2 needles that will get the blood. But when you pull the cartridge out, they go into the device, so it becomes its own sharps container, which means you can just throw it in the garbage.
My Lord.
Wow.
So it's super easy. This is approved for direct-to-consumer use already in Japan and Brazil. There's a few other countries online. And then U.S., it's approved with a coach supervision, and we're expecting and hoping that it will be approved for direct-to-consumer here very shortly.
Oh my God.
Okay, so once people have that.
That's part of it, because now you can get access to a lot of the data types we're talking about, whether it's small molecule metabolites or proteins, and you can get them out of the blood. And since you mentioned Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, so what Theranos was trying to do is they were trying to take conventional medical tests and then miniaturize them.
Yeah.
And people have failed on that trajectory quite a lot. What we're doing is something a little bit different. You're taking what are called omics tests, which we do all the time in science, and they're only ever done on very small amounts of blood. And so we're not actually changing
You're
that
not trying
technology
to reduce the,
at all. This is how you always do them, but it becomes an information problem. But in the era of AI and where we're at now, I'd much rather have an information problem of how do I read all these small molecules and figure out what they say about health than trying to solve a mechanical issue that people have failed at a bunch of times.
Because to have that thorough of a screening today, conventionally, a doctor could even order that test, and does it go to a special lab? Do most labs even measure these?
So these metabolites, these small molecules, are mostly done in the research world. These are just now starting to hit into clinical practices. And, we'll be going through a variety of different approvals on that as we develop those tests out. But this allows you to get access to a much broader range of potential information. I was in a meeting just stepped down as the CEO of one of the largest health companies in the world. And we were chatting about this. And one of the things that he said as we were going through this is the only reason that we do lots of the tests that we do now is only because of historical chance. If you were creating medicine now, you would take all these omics measures, and that would be the substrate that you would use in order to identify what was going on in your body, because you're going from your doctor measuring 10 things out of your blood to having thousands of measurements, and you can do so for about the same cost. Mm-hmm. And so that is a capability that's really coming. Switching gears from the blood, the other really big element that I highly recommend for people's health is to look at the microbiome. I don't know if that's a familiar topic.
We're super interested in it. And to me, I'm like, how are they measuring that? How do they get a sample? Do we know what the composition is supposed to be? How do we alter it? It's supposed to be a panacea?
Nothing is a panacea, for sure. Sometimes we get excited about things, but no panacea, no utopia. But it is really important. So one of the things you mentioned was, how do you get a sample? One of the elements that we invented over the last year or so was a new way to get access to a microbiome sample. So have you done your microbiomes before?
No, but I can assume.
No, but I got obsessed with doing a fecal transplant for a while.
We were deciding in our friend group who was going to be the provider of the stool.
That's right.
And it caused some interpersonal issues.
Of course, who we thought was the most healthy. And,
that's very complicated. You've got to go through a lot of people before you find a good stool source.
It varies state to state. Yeah, there's some states that are very open to it and others that aren't.
So most people have not done their own microbiome. And one of the hurdles to that is because you can just imagine the logistics of having to do this. You get a kit, but you have to poop in a bucket or on a piece of paper. You got to get a little shovel, scoop it up.
You got to get your hands dirty.
Some of the tests require freezing, and I don't know what you keep in your freezer.
Not sure.
Probably not sure.
Yeah, we'll try to avoid it.
It's probably
bound to happen, but
So we invented something called the microbiome wipe, which is basically what it sounds like. So it's made out of a special polymer. It's a special toilet paper, space-age toilet paper, and you wipe like you do every day.
Yeah, till there's blood if you're me. Just side note. Okay.
You got to throw that one out.
The blood, you'll get too much human DNA.
I'm going to give you an extra sample you'll get from me.
Anyway, you drop it in a vial, you close it, you shake it. In about 10 seconds, the wipe will dissolve away. And then you push a button, releases salt solution, and it will preserve the DNA. And we showed that we could get just as high quality sequencing. We published this in Frontiers in Immunology last year to show that we could do it, and so you can get it. Wow. I will admit that I have a version of this for both of you if you want it.
The toilet paper?
Yes.
Duh.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you after.
Oh my God.
I want all this stuff.
But I do have. I brought you each a kit just in case.
Oh my God.
In case you were interested in this.
Wait, do we mail it in somewhere?
We mail it to each other.
You mail it to each other.
And identify what's going on.
It has a package, so it just goes in the mail, and then it will populate all the data back to you on your computer. So it'll just get it back to you.
So then my next question is, am I wrong in that there's still so little known about the microbiome? There's some interesting links to some chronic diseases that stem from there, it appears.
It's really evolved a lot in the past few years. So if you go back like 5 years ago, we were doing microbiomes, but you had to squint a little, right? You're like, okay, there's some information. But now there's actually quite a lot you can say. You can get information about the gene content, whether or not you are making too much ammonia, for example, in your gut. And why would you care about that? Because if you have certain species and they're making ammonia, that will cause your stomach to be less acidic. won't break down food as well. And you can see if that's in your gut. A bunch of your neurotransmitters are made in the gut.
Yeah,
and
your serotonin's made.
Serotonin, 95% are made in the gut. That matters a lot.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of vitamins and nutrients that your gut will create. And you can look at the gene content. And I keep mentioning the gene content. So the way we do sequencing now, you get all the genes of the different microbes that are in there. And we know which genes encode synthesis pathways. And so if you go in there, like the last one I did, I didn't have any of the synthesis pathways for some of the vitamin Bs, and it turned out I was low on those. My physician had told me that a year before, and she'd given me some shots for it to make it better. But after I did the gut health test, I saw, oh, okay, I actually don't have the bacteria in there to do it. There's risk factors like TMAO is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, but you only get it if you have certain bacteria in your gut. Because if you have certain bacteria in your gut, they will eat either L-carnitine, which comes out of red meat, and they'll change it into something called trimethylamine. And then trimethylamine gets converted in your liver to TMAO, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Coming back to one of the compounds I talked about being really important before, which is phosphatidylcholine for your brain, those same bacteria will eat phosphatidylcholine. They'll turn it into trimethylamine again to TMAO. So if you have these bacteria, you could be trying to help your brain. So you could be supplementing, which we think can make a big difference into the health of the brain. But if you have bad bacteria, instead, you could be causing problems to
fueling a different disease. Yeah.
You're going to win the Nobel Prize.
Oh my God.
Our first Nobel Prize.
No, we've had one, but not pre, I don't think.
Okay, well,
this is the first.
That would be a big
this is our
big
pre-Nobel. I don't even know what that
exciting.
means. It's an incredible future that feels right around the corner. Are you pissed off, Lee, that this is all happening right now for you?
Not at all.
You're not.
So let me tell you about one more factor, and then I'll tell you why I'm not pissed off.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the Airville population, we had people from 21 to 90 plus. We were able to develop an algorithm in looking at how your ability to control the expression patterns of blood analytes changed. The algorithm basically gave you your biological age. It's the age your body says you are as opposed to what your birthday says you are. And the lower the biological age is from your birthday age, the better you're aging, okay? So we looked at the Airville women and found that they lost 1.5 years of biological age per year they stayed in the program. So 6 years lost in 4 years. Really striking. Wow. Men did 0.8 years, about half as much, roughly. And Nathan actually had his biological age go down 10 years during that time.
Oh, my God.
He was 71 when they did his.
Yes.
Lee and I went to high school together. I don't know if you know that.
Their biology were cohorts.
But the other thing we were able to show is people that had diseases like type 2 diabetes always had biological age is higher than their chronological age. And what's really cool about this is the algorithm for biological age uses metabolites. And for the individual, they give us clues as to how you can optimize aging. So the reason I'm confident is my biological age is about 15 years younger than my chronological age.
Congratulations.
So I have plenty of time to see all of these come to fruition.
You sure do.
I often float this at dinner parties. If I happen to be born at the right time to witness us arrest aging and stop it, I will become very, very suspicious that we are in a simulation. What would the odds be 300,000 years as a species that us four were born in a time where we might watch this happen? Very suspicious. Are you suspicious, Nathan?
You hit on one of my favorite pet topics.
Oh, good.
Good. I'm very suspicious about this.
Yes.
So, for example, in quantum mechanics, there's these weird things with the effective observer. And so if you don't watch it, if you look at the slit experiments and so forth, it's this fuzzy wave. Only if you watch it does a particle go through one at a time. So if you're a programmer and you're hacking up a simulation, you're going to say, I'm not going to bother to calculate every freaking particle unless someone's watching. And if they're watching, I'll calculate. But if not, I'm just going to make it a wave function because it's just simpler. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so there's, of course, the famous argument about if you consider any advance at all in the ability to do simulation, then it eventually becomes the same as reality. So what's the likelihood that you're in base reality instead of one of the multiple regressions?
Yeah, we're in a model right now.
We're in a model right
here
now.
to deal with climate change, perhaps.
So I don't take any of this like very seriously, but I do like to think about it because I do find some of the aspects of quantum mechanics really bizarre. They kind of do make sense to me a little bit.
If it's
a simulation.
Would they program it in for us to even be able to have these conversations to question it?
Yeah, because we have to run free for it to work.
It probably depends how much you paid for your simulation package. I always imagine like waking up and just be like, okay, did you enjoy your ride to Earth, sir?
Yes.
And you can't afford it again for another 500
But obviously
years.
you're paying for a simulation whereby you live for eternity, which is what it's going to give you. In about 13 years, you're going to shut all your aging off and you'll be frozen at that age for eternity. And at that point, you should go, yeah, duh, I'm in a fucking simulation. They have never done this before. Why am I here during this time?
But since we really don't know, I am trying to work on longevity. I like the ride. I would like to hang out as long as possible.
I guess I'm just asking, Lee, you've seen so many insanely revolutionary breakthroughs since you were born in, 1939?
38.
We just interviewed Jane Fonda, and she was born in 37. And she, like you, intimidatingly sharp and cogent and linear.
What my feeling is about biological age is, how do you feel? I look at my 85-year-old colleagues, and I think I'm in better shape. I do 100-plus push-ups every day and sit-ups and all of those things. So those do make a difference.
Yeah.
There's no question. Now, making us immortal is quite a different question. Slowing the aging process down, I think, is much less of a ask.
But if you start with the simple notion of, okay, mitosis makes perfect replicas of each cell, it's conceivable that we could make an identical mirror image of ourselves to infinity. There's this curious mechanism that makes us not make perfect mirror copies.
Many mechanisms.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
But
in concept, if a cell divides and replicates itself perfectly, there's no reason that aging is implicit.
Well, let me tell you another really interesting aspect about aging. We studied maybe 10 years ago, 18 people that were 115 or older.
Oh, my goodness.
The genetics were absolutely fascinating about genes that might correlate with this longevity, but the population size was too small. The really important thing I learned, though, is once you get to be 100, most people die very, very rapidly of a complete systems failure. And the classic way is you fall, you break a hip, that's it. 6 weeks later, you're dead. So my objective now is I want to slow the aging process so that people's health span can get them into the hundreds, and then they're kind of on their own, right?
Yeah.
The argument that people spend 25% of their healthcare dollars in the last 6 months is just terrifying, and this ensures that it's not going to happen, if that's a general rule.
Well, it's an incredible future. I'm very excited to watch it unravel and a bit terrified for all the reasons everyone else is. But the age of scientific wellness, why the future of medicine is personalized, data-rich, and in your hands, is a great starter piece for everyone to read to understand where we're headed. And it is very exciting. Every time we get doomsday about AI getting rid of every job and relegating us to a leisure class, what that looks like, all that's scary. But then I always say to Monica, but AI might cure cancer like next week.
Yeah.
Like once it turns on and it starts learning and it has data, like literally could be next week. And this disease could
and I
fall
think last
next.
time we talked about it, I said, yeah, but I don't care or something. And
You
now
didn't
I
care
do.
then, now you do.
I do care.
We
Now
got
that we're,
you.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, if we're going to let you live to be 100
know.
and be productive and excited about life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I actually think we're entering by far the most exciting period ever in biology, and it's because of AI. Because I don't think we can actually solve the really complicated issues, like can you reduce the error rate of replication across your entire body? I don't think we get there without AI. So you actually have to have this massive acceleration of AI in order to even start contemplating some of the really big challenges that we're just not even within reach before. So I'm trying to expand my thinking on, can we actually go to places that were impossible before by this, and how fast do we do it, and how do we do it in a way that's safe and ethical? And it's incredibly complicated.
So
anyway.
complicated.
And we're not even getting into the geopolitics of it all. Like, we have to do it.
Yeah.
We cannot be
we
third.
have to do it.
Absolutely. We can't be third.
Yeah.
We don't really have...
Or even second.
You got to be
That's
Because
right.
we
Like
know
to
who
be
might be
first.
first.
Yes. So it really makes the decision for you. And it's here. So I hope everyone reads The Age of Scientific Wellness, Why the Future of Medicine is Personalized, Data Rich, and in Your Hands. Gentlemen, it's been so nice to have both of you. I'm so glad you both came in person. It's such a pleasure to meet you. It's a real honor to meet you, Lee. Incredible work.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Good.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
We will wipe with these products
Yes.
and we'll report back.
On the fact check. We'll report back on the fact
On the
check.
fact check.
Well,
All right,
great.
wipe and mail in.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Oh, yeah, don't just flush it down the toilet.
Don't just wipe.
Next up is the fact check. I don't even care about facts. I just want to get into your pants.
Did you have F1 this morning?
I did. This is my second shirt. I'm embarrassed to tell you. I had to just now go in and change.
You spittled?
No, I sweat so profusely through my back.
This morning?
Yes, at 8:30 a.m.
oh,
Almost
boy.
where you might think, is there a metabolic issue going on
Yeah.
here?
Ding, ding, ding.
Tell me.
For today's fact check. It's for Lee Hood and Nathan Price, those medicine guys.
Yes, metabolic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like that word. But anyways, I made a fucking mess out of my first shirt this morning. I mean, like someone threw a bucket of water at my back when I was walking as a
Wait.
prank.
That's so weird.
I know.
Because it's early
I know.
and
It wasn't-
it's not hot.
No, I don't know.
And I feel like you probably weren't like, well, I guess I don't know because I don't know about F1.
Tell me.
But I feel.
Ask some questions.
Okay. I feel like often you'll sweat if you're a little, not nervous, but you're interviewing
Intense.
a person. It's, you have to be on in a different way and have questions ready. And I feel like F1 would be different because it's your friends, but I guess you do still have
Well, it's my friends, but one of them's calling from France over the internet.
Yeah.
Another one's in Orlando at a hair show over the
Oh,
internet.
he is.
So a lot of, internet,
Sure.
orchestrating 2 different Zoom calls, and then I'm you in F1. So it's like you right now are holding the facts. You've got like the game plan in your lap.
Yeah.
And so on F1, I'm you, as
Yeah.
I just said. I go by Monica on F1.
Oh my God, cool.
Even though it's called F1 with DRS.
I think I might need a little bit of a,
a taste of it.
yeah, if you're going to be using my name.
Your likeness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go by Monica Padman, but so that there would be no legal issues, I go by Monica Leland Padman.
Oh, you should have gone by Monica Silly Padman.
Oh, that would be really good. Is that a known joke? That
No, I just made
from
it
your
up.
youth?
I just made it up.
Okay. Well, yeah. So maybe I was like, I'm trying to run. There's a structure that I guess I'm
I get
loosely in
that.
charge of.
Okay. Well, then that is like armchair as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
And then even weirder because there's no time to edit. here's
oh, so you have to pay
another
attention.
layer is just like I want it to go perfectly.
Oh.
That's probably where the stress
The
comes in.
sweat comes.
Yeah, the flop sweat. How was your sexy weekend? You had a
was really
sexy
nice.
girls trip to
Yeah.
a sexy hotel.
We can talk about it. First, I want to talk about something else.
Oh, okay.
I'm drinking a tea in here,
Yeah.
which I normally arrive with my tea.
Mm-hmm.
But today I brought my tea bag. I didn't have time to make it. Well, turns out I did, but I read the schedule wrong.
Okay. Shit.
It
Well,
updated this morning.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously
should've
I'm
been
not.
a text.
Yeah, text would have been nice, but
Well,
that's
I
okay.
assumed you saw it because I hung out here till like 10:04.
No, I literally walked up. I checked my phone. I walked up the stairs at 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what it is? My watch is like 4 minutes
Your
ahead.
watch is on Miami time.
Well, no,
still.
really. My watch my watch right now says 23 after the hour,
Okay, yeah.
which I don't really know what it is after the hour. 20. So I'm running 3 minutes. That at least explains
That does
it.
explain
But I didn't think of it when I looked at my watch. So I was like, oh, guess she must have seen the schedule changed.
I didn't, which is fine, but I brought my tea bag instead.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got here, I was like, well, it'll be fine because I'm in the middle of a whole issue with oat milk because I'm trying not to drink it as much because of the gums and the oils.
What? Now
Yeah.
oat milk's bad for us?
Right. Certain oat milks, I guess, or lots of these products. not just oat. They have gums and oils, and I guess
What
it's
are
bad.
gums? Chewing gum?
Xanthan
It
gums.
has xanthan gum in it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And others. And I guess it's bad. And the one I love the most,
Is the
obviously,
worst.
it has it.
Of course.
And
Well, that's probably what makes it taste good.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, looked at me so weird.
Like you were doing some out of character.
Yes. They're like, I guess I've never seen you chew gum. And I said, I love gum.
You know what, Monica? Same. So I love gum. In high school, I had a Ziploc gallon-sized bag hanging from the hook inside my locker, and it was filled to the very brim with all the different cheaper gums, the double mints, the
Winter
yellow,
Fresh.
winter green,
Yeah.
big red.
Yeah,
They'd come
I
in a
love Big Red.
10-pack assortment, and I'd get a bunch of them, and
Yeah.
I'd take it all apart, and it would just be the sticks of gum.
Oh, wow. So you wouldn't know what you were getting.
No, you would, because
Sometimes you don't
you're right.
know.
It's all aluminum. I don't know
Grab
how I
bag.
knew that. Gum roulette. Well, at any rate, I chewed gum nonstop from 6th grade until I don't know, 20s?
You were probably chewing it when I was born.
Yeah,
And
blew a big
then-
bubble on your birthday,
Yeah.
August 24th, 1987.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that day actually. Summertime,
Big gum day.
I had an extra slice of gum in there. Blew a big old bubble.
Yeah.
And I had chewed so many different flavors that it turned the gum brown.
Yeah. You just shoved it all in at once.
And it turned it brown. I had blew a brown bubble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember
for
it.
me.
Yes.
Oh.
Ding, ding, ding.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Did you ever chew it so much? There were a couple gums that if you chewed it the same stick so much, it started
to
to
liquid.
disintegrate.
Fucking hate that kind
Was
of gum.
so weird.
Hate that kind of gum. It seemed to track on the sugar-free variety that did that. But there are some sugar-free ones that do, like, you know what I really like is an adult. Because those were all Wrigley products. The Wrigley gum that I was chewing. Trident.
Oh, I love
It's
Trident.
very stable gum.
And Orbit.
Orbit's great too. I love
Yeah.
the bubblegum flavor. And you get the little plastic container. It's not good for the environment, but boy, it's fun to rattle.
Yeah.
But that's a good, Trident holds up under pressure.
Yeah.
Stable, very
Well,
stable
6
gum.
out of 7 dentists recommend Trident.
Yeah.
So-
I think even 8 out of 7
No, it's
That's how much it
there's
is
one
now.
dentist that's holding out.
is holding out.
Yeah.
It's in the pocket of Orbits.
Okay, I got off track. So
Your tea.
oat milk. So I'm having trouble. I'm in a phase. I'm in a new era.
Can I ask if you read
many
this somewhere
eras.
or did someone whisper this to you? You got to be careful.
I know. I saw someone on Instagram who I follow, who I trust, who was going through this themselves. And
They were on a warpath.
Well, they were posting about different oat, like they were trying different oat milks. They were in my position. They were sad
Okay.
to learn this information. So they were testing out different oat milks. Then I did do some research and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's bad. I mean, I never really found out why it's that bad.
See, that's what we got to be careful about. These things just travel really quickly. Like, did you hear what's bad? No, what's bad? Apples.
Apples are bad.
There you go.
They taste bad.
No, they taste delicious. They're so crisp. It's nature's toothbrush.
Hurts your teeth.
Like if you're in a pinch here somewhere and you're like, fuck, I could really go for a brushing of my teeth, but I don't have any of my equipment. The next best thing, in my opinion, is eat a couple apples because it brushes your teeth as you're eating it. Yeah, crunchy and it's real flat and it washes your teeth really well.
But I think it hurts your gums and stuff.
No, it makes mine feel powerful.
Okay.
And energized.
Anyway, so I bought an oat milk that only had 3 ingredients. Oats, water, nothing.
Salt?
Yeah, probably.
And it tastes like shit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, of
It just tastes like water.
From an oatmeal. If you overfill your oatmeal, my Bob's Red Mill in the morning, I've got it dialed because I eat it 100 out of 100 mornings. I eat Bob's Red Mill. But sometimes I pour a little too much water in it from the Instahot. Yeah, and I got to strain it out. And sometimes I've sipped it out.
Is it good?
No, it's terrible. It's not good.
is?
Yeah, I mean, the product's great, but that water, just oat water, no.
I know.
Okay.
It needs that cream. It needs the
It needs
gums
the
and
gum,
the oils.
yeah.
So anyway, then I switched back to cow's milk.
There we go.
But I don't like that either. 'Cause
Pooty issues?
yeah, it's like not great for my body. I'm only using a teeny bit.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't feel great in my body, and it is too rich.
Oh, wow. Too creamy.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Anyway, so I've decided if I'm out and about and I'm getting a coffee or something, I'm allowed to have gums and oils.
Oh, cool.
If I'm cooking it, if I'm making it at my house, I have to either do the the water oats or the
cow's milk,
which is my normal morning. But if I happen to be out or it's like second treat, I can have gums and oils. And today,
that would be a good clothing line.
Gums and oils. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Ooh, maybe I'll try to get in touch. Well, not like I haven't been trying to get in touch with Mary Kate and Ashley, but maybe I'll try
again. Have you actually
again.
been trying to get in touch?
Well, I've tried, yeah.
You've DM'd them? They're not even on it.
No, they're not on Instagram, but I've tried to get to their people.
Okay. They probably don't even have any people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they're so elusive. But you know who's friends with them?
Who?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like we could get to her.
Oh, wow. This is... Yeah. You generally want to go to somebody low status as the gatekeeper. You don't want to go to someone that's like the highest status. Like, step one, we got to become best friends with Tom Cruise.
Well,
that'll lead us to his stunt double, Terry. I'm having a hard time getting his number.
No, how dare you connect Terry? Although Terry's great, but
he's the best.
He's not the same as Mary Kate and Ashley. But no, I feel like if we had Jennifer Lawrence on and we did a good job, she'd then maybe recommend. Or, we could do Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh, wow. Now this is getting very Machiavellian.
She's very
I just
close.
started a show that she's in, Love and Death.
It's supposed to be great.
It's great. She's phenomenal. It's great. Yeah.
Okay. We love you, Elizabeth Olsen. Feel free to come on. And then also, if it goes well, I don't want to use her for that. That's rude.
I think I watched that show with a particular interest in her because I know that her sisters. And they're seemingly much different.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
Elizabeth is much more... She does interviews and she does stuff. Like, she's out there.
She's an actor.
I wonder if she feels weird about the row. Like, am I supposed to wear that every day? I love it, but am I supposed to wear that every day? Or am I not ever supposed to wear it to...
My guess is the latter.
An identity.
Yeah. I mean, just imagining growing up in the shadow of those two.
Also, it's like not supportive.
But think about this too. And by the way, this is me speculating. I have no inside information. This never came up when I was dating.
Okay.
AO.
You called her that?
Occasionally, yeah. AO.
You did?
Yeah. That's pretty good, right? Wow. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
I don't know.
Okay.
It just really took me by surprise.
Okay. So I don't know this at all. But if you're the younger sibling, that's already hard. The older siblings, they're using you only when they're bored.
The older siblings are always the best ones.
I totally disagree as a middle child, but regardless, they only hang with you when they're bored out of their fucking mind.
Yeah.
Now add in the older sibling has an identical twin, which no two people can be as close as identical twins.
Exactly.
So I imagine that's got to compound the estrangement.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know that. I don't know anything about her. I don't know if we ever even talked about her younger sister.
That's even worse.
Well.
That proves it. Because I'm sure she talked about Mary Kate.
Well, Mary Kate was just around.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay, no. Now we're into theoretical. I want to be very clear that I don't know anything about.
No, I know. We don't. So.
Okay, so your weekend. Let's talk about your weekend.
Oh, wait, but I didn't finish.
Oh, okay.
So this morning when I brought my tea bag, I thought, it'll be okay because I bought oat milk a while back for the attic. The one I like with gums and oils.
Yeah.
Since I didn't have time to make it at my house, it was a good excuse for me to have gums and oils.
Yeah.
But then when I got here, it's expired.
Who gives a fuck?
No, I'm too scared of that.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't care at all about expiration dates.
I put it there so I can throw it out.
I'm going to put it back in the fridge.
No.
And then I'm going to drink it tomorrow. I'm going to bring in some cereal.
No.
I have a big, big bowl.
But we had some other thing in here, a nut pod.
Ooh.
And so I'm trying a nut pod. It also has gums and oils.
Yeah, well, all the good
but
stuff.
But that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's vanilla flavored. So now I'm drinking a vanilla flavored tea, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
Why are oils bad for you in milk?
I don't know. It's the added oil. It's not like the natural oil from cow's milk.
He's adding oil to his coffee.
Well, not olive. Olive's good.
Premier oil, right?
These are like synthetic oils.
Bad oils.
Olive oil's premium oil.
It is. Okay.
All right. Now your weekend, which you're so reluctant to talk about.
We finally got to my nut pod.
Yes.
Which was it was a long walk to the nut pod.
It was.
Yeah, we went to Calamigos. Friends from home.
How many girls total?
5 girls total.
Okay, FGT.
Yes. Oh, you're really into
Something's happening today. It's part of the sweating and the metabolism, I think.
It's like that thing Ricky does.
Yeah, it's happening to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd like you to get better at that, actually.
Me too. It's a fun party trip.
It is.
The 5 gals.
Yeah. And we went to Calamigos Ranch in Malibu.
Were there any bachelors there on a golf trip or anything?
No. It wasn't for
wasn't
wedding.
fun.
I feel like you're thinking of it more wedding.
I'm thinking of bachelorette party.
I know, which it's not.
But it always is. If you get 5 gals together, sure, one of them's out of commission with a child. That's clear to everyone. At this point, she's close to delivering.
Yeah.
But the other 4, virtually a bachelorette weekend.
Sure.
That's the vibe. When you see 5 gals at the pool on a vacation destination and you're there on your golf trip, that's going to pique everyone's interest.
Okay.
That didn't happen?
No. No, it didn't. Yeah, we were there for kind of a faux baby shower, just an excuse for everyone to be together before Callie has her baby. And so it was really nice.
What are the
really
highlights?
fun.
Anything exciting?
A lot of pool time. We went to the beach. They had a beach club. So we went to the beach. We went to Nobu.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a pricey restaurant.
Yeah.
That might be the priciest restaurant.
No, it's not the priciest restaurant, but
I've seen
it's pricey.
some bills there that absolutely staggered
I'm sure.
my imagination. Okay.
I mean, it's not cheap. It is expensive.
There was 5 of you.
Uh-huh.
And how much was the bill? $1,600?
No. It was like 500. It was.
Is that possible? People were not drinking?
Only 2 of us had 1 drink.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, how do you explain that?
Well, we've been drinking all day.
Yeah, everyone was already shit-faced.
Well, we just, it wasn't that we were shit-faced.
You guys are trying to sop up the booze from the
We
day.
had been drinking all day. It was
Hard.
8:15. Not
In the morning,
hard.
you started drinking?
No, we started drinking probably around noon.
That's pretty late.
I mean, again, it's not a bachelorette party.
I think it's a bachelorette party.
You want it to be, but it wasn't. But we were drinking consistently at the beach.
Yeah, of course. Was there service at the beach or did you have to lug everything?
There was.
So
It was cool.
You could order drinks right to your chair? Oh my God. Like
And they
you're on,
set up the chairs.
like you're on vacation at a real place.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think it is.
It's weird when you go in town.
Yeah, true.
I had a similar, I had a out of the ordinary, but within town trip of my own.
Tell me.
So Lincoln and Kristen went to see Lizzo in Palm Springs Friday night.
Ooh.
And they spent the night there,
Ooh.
which left D Money and I to have a special date night
Oh.
that we started planning a couple days beforehand.
Cute.
And on Friday morning, as I was taking my morning evacuation, she came in and handed me a piece of paper and a list of everything we were going to do.
Oh, itinerary.
An itinerary, right. That's what they're called. Thank you. And we nailed it. So she got out of school. Oh, she specifically wanted to be in the 454 SS.
Oh.
Because she really likes going fast in that truck. She loves
She's
the
changed.
0 to 60 in it a lot. She wants to
Wow.
race. She always telling me to race people and beat this guy. And she's
She used to not like that.
I know. But and it's that truck in particular. She loves that truck.
Wow. Okay.
Which I love because I also love that truck.
You do.
And no one likes it when I fucking gas it except for her. So we took that truck to In-N-Out Burger Friday
Your
evening.
favorite spot.
Yes. Parked.
What'd you get?
2 doubles, protein style, animal style fries. She got a cheeseburger. I'm glad you asked this. She got a cheeseburger and fries.
Yeah.
And a Coca-Cola, which she's never gotten.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't drink soda.
Right.
But this was a special date.
Oh, yeah.
So she had a Coca-Cola, but she only had like 3 sips. And then she said, I need to go get a glass of water. And I was like, no, she's just a good girl. So she tried doing Coke, but she ended up wanting water with her. Anyways, we left there. We took the scenic route downtown. So through all the city streets, lots of peeling out, lots of Florida, lots of racing. We were having a great time. And then we went, this is fancy. People are going to be triggered. We went to the Ritz-Carlton.
Wow.
In downtown LA because we wanted to have views of a city.
Okay.
We wanted to be high up. That was the prereq. We wanted to be high up in downtown LA to look out over the city at night. So I got a corner room.
Oh, you got a hotel.
Yes. We went and checked into the Ritz-Carlton.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh. And
this is so cute.
it was so cute. And upon check-in, we were told if you want popcorn, we have free popcorn tickets. You just take them across the street to the movie theater and there's free popcorn. Yes. So we're excited about that, but we get up to the room and we look out the windows for a long time where we see the observatory. We're figuring out where our house is compared to that.
Yeah.
And then we are also in a club lounge.
What's that?
The club floor.
What's that?
They had a room. It's like the club room on the 23rd floor. If you're
Like
on
a
that floor,
suite?
like just this big buffet,
What?
bunch of different.
In the room?
No. There's like,
Oh, I know what you mean.
yes, a club. There's a
like
club.
a lounge.
Yes.
Up there. Only for the people on that.
On the club floor.
Right.
Maybe for everyone. I don't know. But they told us that.
That happened to me in that horrible hotel in Austin. So it's not always good.
No,
So
right.
For people, it's not always good. So don't get that upset.
Everyone calm down is what you're saying. This one was spectacular.
Oh, no.
So
great.
I'm going to remind you, we just had In-N-Out.
Yeah.
So we get in there and there's macaroons on display and Delta's
dessert time?
fired up. So she starts pounding some macaroons. She finds maybe a cookie she likes. We're sitting on this couch. We're chatting with other guests that are there. Then we go downstairs and we're like, let's go walk around LA Live. We're like right next to this outdoor area. Go down to LA Live. We walk around. We see some guy leaving the bar hammered, which I think is the first time that I called it out. I go, oh my God, look how drunk this guy is. And so he comes out of the bar and he's swaying gator walk. And then he finds a little like power box that someone's sitting on. He immediately leans into that and is touching the other person, like no boundaries.
Yeah.
And Delta's like, wow, he's really like, that really got her. Then she got scared.
Yeah.
Because now we're walking down the street with this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no, you don't need to be scared. This is very benign. He's just drunk. This is fun. Let's watch him. He bumped into a lot of things. He then crossed the street, walked on the sidewalk, walked directly into this huge fence and fell down to the ground and then got up and walked away. And at that point, we were both laughing. He was far enough away that I was just amusing. Look at this adult acting like a baby.
Yeah.
So that was educational. Then we get our popcorn and we stay in line for a very long time. It's Friday night at the Regal Cinema, right? So we probably dedicate like 35 minutes to this 2 bags of free popcorn.
Wow.
Which I like.
Oh, wow.
Because it's already too entitled, right? We're at the Ritz.
Okay.
But now we had to really earn it for the free popcorn.
You're right.
So then we get the popcorn, and then we go back to the club level, and then there's more eating and more eating. And then we get to the room, and she had prepared a surprise for us. She unloaded her backpack, and she had a fresh tube of Pringles sour cream and onion. Family size. Her whole luggage was a family size Ruffles sour cream and cheddar, and then 2 Almond Joys because she knows she and I both like Almond Joys. And she had secretly gone to Target with TT the day before to prep for our special night. Monica, it was
so sweet.
Heaven. And then we got back to the room. We had all these snacks. Now we're just eating so much. And then we're like staring out the window at all the lights. And we spent a long time looking out the windows, and it totally delivered. It was like everything I'd hoped. And I felt like we were in a completely different city.
Yeah.
It was so fun. Wake up in the morning. I had a room credit of $100. So we ordered room service. And with the tip, it was exactly $100. It was perfect.
That's exciting.
She had French toast, brioche French toast, something. And I had some bacon. She didn't have that with her French toast. I said, oh, I noticed this morning when I got coffee in the club lounge, they had a huge tray of bacon. So finish that thing, then go into the club lounge, have another breakfast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she has cereal there. She has bacon. She's already had French toast.
Oh, my God.
She already had In-N-Out. She had the popcorn. She had the 95 things. And then we were going to go to Ace's championship baseball game.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'm going to take a poop, And I took one.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got to take a poop? She's like, no. And at this point, I'm looking at her little body and I'm thinking how much food is inside of it. And I'm starting to get very nervous.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of food in that 3.5 foot body.
Yeah.
She didn't seem to care. And we went to the baseball game. Ace won 13-2, won the championship.
Wonderful.
It was wonderful observing that. Yeah, it was a hell of a date night.
I love that.
It was great. She did kick me a ton in the middle of the night. She woke me up all night long. She kicks like a mule, bites like a crocodile.
That's a very special memory.
Oh, it's so fun.
She'll remember that forever.
I hope.
Yeah, she
Just
will.
don't know with these two.
No, that's a core memory. That's very, very sweet. You're a good dad.
Oh, thank you. I'm just a selfish dad. It was so fun to go out and just, spoil someone you love.
Yeah.
That was that.
Great. I love that story. All right. Well, let's move on to some facts.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
This is for Lee Hood, and who, one of the fathers of the Human Genome Project. Very legendary. Honored to have him here.
Also, I want to say our second, he was 84, so he wasn't quite 85. Mm-hmm. But our second mid-80s guests in the last month that were both sharper than you and I.
Definitely.
Markedly so, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
It's very encouraging.
I hope I get more and more sharp.
I can already feel myself getting less sharp. Like that turn has happened. No, you can't.
I can't.
You have?
I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Where do you feel it? Because I know where mine is.
Everywhere.
Okay.
I guess just communicating has gotten harder.
You can't find the words you want?
Not always.
That's where I feel it.
But I also wonder if before I just wasn't searching for those types of words. What we're talking about now is more...
That's possible, but you and I interviewed someone on Friday that we had interviewed 3 years beforehand. So I thought, I'll listen to that previous interview so I don't go over the exact same ground, because it's hard to remember 3 years ago what you talked about. And I think in listening to that, I was like, you were much sharper 3 years ago. I thought I could hear the verbal dexterity was much higher than it
I don't think
currently
so.
is. Okay.
I don't think so.
All right, I'll stop worrying. Okay, but Lee, bona fide genius.
Yeah. And Nathan, also, I called he's going to win the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, you made your first Nobel prediction.
Have you used your wipe yet?
I haven't. I don't even know if I've brought it out of the attic. Oh, no, it's sitting right here.
Okay.
I could use it right now.
Oh.
Do you want me to do that live? No, it's got to be after
I think you need a fresh
duty.
poo.
Yeah, right now it's spick and span back there because I just used the Bronto.
Yeah, no, you have to do it after a poop.
A duty. Okay. Have you used yours?
No, and when I was editing this, I thought, I need to do this before the fact check.
Yeah.
But then I started my period, and I don't think I can do it.
You don't want
because
to
what if some period gets on
cross-contamination.
Yeah.
They might think you're dying and there's blood in your stool.
Yeah, and like eggs.
They might send an ambulance directly.
Yeah, so I have to wait.
Okay. I had a foray into eggs this weekend, by the way. You know, I don't eat eggs.
Right.
I was thinking, I only ate eggs with toast. I've never eaten eggs without toast. I always make a sandwich and dip it in the yolk.
What?
That's why I like it. So that crossed my mind at the Ritz.
Yeah.
So guess what? On Saturday morning, I ordered eggs, just no bread.
Yeah.
And I ate over easy eggs.
And it was fine.
And it was delicious. And I felt nothing. And then yesterday morning, I made myself another round of over easy eggs.
Oh my God.
No bread. Oh, also, I cooked my first tray of cornbread, gluten-free cornbread muffins. I made those this weekend.
Whoa.
They were delicious. And they're gluten-free.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah. And you can make those muffins in 90 seconds.
Oh, what do you mean?
You must make muffins and stuff.
I actually don't make I made blueberry ones not that long ago, but I don't make muffins that often.
Yeah, I got the Bob's Red. This sounds like this was one long ad for Bob's, but it is the truth. I got the Bob's packet. I dumped that in there. Then I got to use a cup and a half of milk, 2 eggs, and then butter.
Oh, okay.
Swirl that around. That took me 5 seconds to swirl that around. And then I just dumped it in a fucking pan and I threw it in the damn oven. And 23 minutes later, I had these delicious corn muffins.
So did you put them in muffin tins, or you just did like cornbread?
A loaf. Yeah, loaf of bread.
Okay.
So anyways, then I got to dip my eggs in that I made with that, and everything's honky-dory. So I'm dipping my toes back in the egg waters.
Oh my God. I can't believe you never put 2 and 2 together that it was because you ate it with toast.
That's silly, right?
Yeah. Because you've been missing out on so much.
Oh, I love eggs so much.
I love eggs.
Oh, they're so good.
Well,
I want some now.
Now, why don't you get Home State?
What happens there?
The best breakfast tacos.
Oh, and they get it with a corn tortilla.
Yes.
Okay.
So good.
And they make their own flour tortillas too.
He can't have that.
I can't have the flour
Yeah.
tortilla.
He has to have
you not
corn.
been listening to the previous 7 minutes of this
flour
conversation?
though.
Callie gets it all the time. She gets it with corn.
She does. Oh, I want to try that.
It's so good. You do have a signature egg dish.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have toast.
which made me realize I should start eating that again.
And you think you can?
I think I can, yeah. I don't know. I'm going to keep pushing and see if I have any issue.
I love that.
Yeah. My famous egg dish, so people know, is a scramble with shallots and kielbasa.
Yeah, it's really good.
And a mix of the Mexican blend cheese.
It's very, very good.
TBD, but I'm definitely interested and I'm pursuing.
That's a big deal. Okay, rates of tuberculosis.
Where were we?
Easy transition.
Rates of tuberculosis.
TB is the 13th leading cause of death and the second leading infectious killer after COVID, above HIV and AIDS.
Wow.
In 2021, an estimated 10.6 million people fell ill with tuberculosis worldwide, 6 million men, 3.4 million women, and 1.2 million children.
These are just all people who've not been vaccinated.
Well, he said something about a resistant strain.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
My stomach just growled.
Oh.
It wants eggs.
We're going to... Yeah. It's ready for eggs now.
In 2021, 8 countries accounted for more than 2/3 of global TB cases. India, 28%.
Ooh, sorry, India.
Yeah. Indonesia, 9.2. China, 7.4. Philippines, 7. Pakistan, 5.8. Nigeria, 4.4. Bangladesh, 3.6. And Democratic Republic of Congo, 2.9.
By the way, huge train accident.
I know.
And I thought, of course, I think of you right away.
You thought I was there?
No.
You should have checked in and made sure I wasn't there.
Well, I already knew you were on a bachelorette
Sexy
party.
bachelorette party.
Yeah. But I am curious, do you think your parents are naturally more interested in that than others?
I would assume that, but then also something happened a few months ago when I was home. A boat situation happened in Kerala and people died.
Oh, wow.
And I said, hey, did you hear about this? And they said no. And then they didn't seem to think about it or care.
Huh.
But I think they should care more because they might know someone.
Yes, from Kerala.
Exactly, but then they didn't. Maybe they thought if we'd have heard by now if someone,
Right, someone they knew.
But it's like if a tornado happens in Georgia, I care more than if it happens in Kansas.
Of course.
You
connect with it.
I just want to know, is everyone okay that I know?
Yeah.
And then I get sad for everyone.
Also just means you have more context for it. If it rips through Duluth and you find out the Arby's is gone, your Arby's being gone is much different than an Arby's you've never been to.
Yeah, it's true.
It almost feels impossible, the number of fatalities.
I know. How many
They say
now?
it was 3 trains that intersected. The last I read was 300, but I think it was growing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's so devastating. Transition into another disease. That's how you lift us out of this.
Yeah, 280 people killed, over 1,100 injured.
1,100 injured.
Well, this is a ding, ding, ding because my grandma, when I was in, I guess it must have been 6th grade or 7th grade, I used to take the bus to their house.
Okay, to
after
Savannah?
school. No. They moved to Atlanta when I was before 6th grade.
Okay.
And they moved into the neighborhood so they could help with us.
Aw.
So I took the bus to their house and I was there after school every day.
Yeah.
And
The school bus.
Yeah, school bus.
Yeah, not a city bus.
Correct.
Okay.
My grandma, we thought, had tuberculosis.
When?
During in 6th grade. I think maybe they went to India and they came back and then they thought she had it. I don't know if she sort of tested positive or something, or the first round tested positive and we all had to isolate. And what's ironic, she had to wear masks and it was so sad, weirdly. And then we all had to get tested. And then turns out she didn't have it.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I've had to take many TB tests because I've taken different immune suppressants. And they want to make sure you don't have TB before they put you on one because that's the disease that'll get a stronghold if you weaken your immune system. Makes me think, a lot of people carry it, don't know they carry it. There would be this test.
Scary. Okay, the book The Empty Planet that he references, that book, it's by Daryl Bricker. Empty Planet, The Shock of Global Population Decline. Came out in 2020. Okay, so he said there's no country that's gaining population in a striking fashion. And now I'm forgetting if he said developed country or not. Because there are countries that are gaining population, but they're more developing countries.
Yeah.
He must have meant
Yeah.
or said. Maybe he even said, and I just forgot.
Although then we had a guest since them who tried to contradict that.
Well, on this is Pew.
Okay.
We trust Pew.
Very trusted brand.
Yeah. By 2100, geez, that's weird.
But that's only 77 years from now.
I know. But it's a weird thing to say. What do you say? Like, it's 2100.
Yeah. 2100.
That sounds weird.
Okay. 2100. That doesn't sound much better.
Yeah.
In the year 2100. In the year 2100.
I don't like either.
In the year 2102. Ugh, too much. I like 93, 85, 86. We just had it down to 2 numbers.
That was best case, but now it's still okay. 2022, 2023.
Yeah, 2024.
2020, but 2100.
No.
That's bad.
21 odd.
It's bad.
That's what we'll go by.
Okay, 2100. By 2100.
Odd.
Five of the world's 10 largest countries are projected to be in Africa.
5 of the 10 largest countries are projected to be in Africa?
Population-wise.
Wow.
Well, okay. In 1950, let me read the list, okay?
Okay, yeah, do it.
China.
This is in descending order from the most populous to the least.
Correct. Okay, I'll do top 5.
Okay.
China, India, U.S., Russia, Japan. 1950. 2020, China, India, U.S., Indonesia, Pakistan.
Okay, but by Japan.
And Russia.
But they've had a declining birth rate for quite a while.
Exactly. Okay, 2100, prediction, India.
Oh, still reigning
first.
champ.
No, China was.
Above China.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So India, China, Nigeria, U.S., Pakistan, then Dominican Republic of Congo, Indonesia, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Egypt.
Oh, wow. They have U.S. hanging around.
At 4, yeah.
Because we are in a declining population as well.
I know.
With our own birth rate.
When we were on our sexy
Bachelorette
bachelorette party, it was not very crowded there, which was nice. But everyone who was there was pregnant.
Really?
We saw so many pregnant women.
Ah.
And I thought, we had just talked about this, and I don't know. So...
Okay, that's where we're going to be at. Well, U.S. is still in the mix, though. Okay.
Still in the mix
All
in
right.
2100. Okay, now according to Johns Hopkins, another
Johns
trusted
Hopkins.
brand,
The most trusted.
what is my cancer risk if I test positive for a BRCA mutation? According to Johns Hopkins,
12% higher? 20% higher?
it says it is high. Having a BRCA mutation means you have a likelihood of 45% to 85% for developing breast cancer in your lifetime, along with a 10% to 46% chance of ovarian cancer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's not great.
No. And that's not what we were saying at all.
No. Although the only thing that might obscure that is the notion that like all men will get prostate cancer. Maybe like if you live long enough, you're going to have breast cancer. Like that's just a given.
But not everyone has a BRCA mutation. This is
No,
just
I know.
if.
I'm just wondering if it's only ticked up from like, maybe the range is 20 to 60%, but with the BRCA variant, it's 40 to 85. Does that make sense? Like it's really only taking you up like 30% more, but just already the base number's so high.
It is getting higher. That's why they've lowered the mammogram age.
To 13?
Like 40.
Oh.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, to 13.
Okay.
It's getting more.
No, thank you.
I know. I've thought about that because I have a love-hate relationship with my breasts.
You do? What's the hate part?
Well, they're large, you know, and I don't love the way they look in clothes.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I wish they were smaller for certain outfits.
Okay. Outfit dependent.
Actually, often I do. You know, because I have considered getting them reduced.
You have not.
Yeah, in my life I have.
When?
Just like when I'm laying down and thinking about it sometimes. I've never like gone to a consultation.
Okay.
But I have thought about it.
Oh.
And I'm not going to. I don't think at this stage I can say I'm probably not going to. But then I thought, if I got breast cancer and they were gone, would anyone even like me? Like I started to get very scared.
Boy.
I guess it's a huge part of my identity.
Surely.
Which is not good.
Why?
Because if it does go away, like I
Oh.
shouldn't be so attached to something like that physically.
Right. You're going to be fine, though. You'll probably keep those all the way to the end.
I don't know. It's just weird to be attached, right? I mean, like men have that with their penises. Like when you had Patriots disease, what was it called?
Peyronie's.
Peyronie's.
Yeah, it was a big hit to my identity.
Weren't you worried?
Sure. Not that if my penis didn't work anymore. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Again, you got to imagine your vagina sealed up. That would be the equivalent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like just became non-functional.
Right. Okay, but what about if okay.
All right.
So what about if
Okay.
the Peyronie's it still worked, but it looked
Crazy?
yeah.
I would embrace
You
that.
wouldn't
That'd be
care.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just need to get firm enough for action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were saying there was a 50% chance it would never get firm again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's different, I guess.
At that point,
Mastectomies.
maybe cut it down a bit. Just make everything easier. If it's not going to get hard ever again, maybe just trim it, Get less equipment down there between your legs. It's a cumbersome setup. It's an engineering flaw.
I mean,
the most motion on your whole body is right there between your thighs.
sure.
And that's where we put everything. Just cram it all right there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, if you had like hired architects and they put your full kitchen on the porch, you'd be like, what on earth is going on here? That's what it feels like.
But where else would it go?
Anywhere would be better. My stomach, coming out the middle of my stomach.
No.
We think that would look gross because we're not used to that.
I know.
But that, at least there's not two big thighs moving around nonstop.
But like it
Like
would.
when I'm running, I have a couple eggs and a sausage. Like there's
I know.
stuff in my lap.
But if it was on your stomach, it would hit stuff when you're walking.
Great. No, you would your underwear would be around your abdomen.
What?
Yes.
Okay. It
To
would
keep everything supported.
But imagine even if you're just leaning on this desk to write something, it would bump up against it.
I think more the liability would be if someone punched you in the stomach. That would be a bummer.
I think about how many times your stomach hits stuff, like just walking around
I
and
don't
like
think
scooting
more than
by
your
chairs.
hips in your groin.
Probably more protected though between your legs.
Yeah, I think it is. It's like housed
How?
in there.
It's not. Well,
You're like
I don't know where yours is
thighs
at,
are
Rob, but
blocking
mine
it.
is above my. No, it's so exposed. When you see a nude male, you go, that's preposterous. No other animal's junk is so on display and in such a weird spot.
If it was on your stomach, it would be way more on display. Just coming out.
Definitely.
Like,
It would. But it would be easier to run and jump and exercise.
I don't know. We'll have to ask someone who has it on their stomach.
Okay, we'll find someone. Maybe instead of getting a reduction, I'll get a transplant. I'll have it moved up to my stomach.
Okay, for science. Anyway, but I do think about women who have mastectomies, and I think emotionally that's really hard.
Absolutely.
Because
God,
it does
yes.
become such a part of your identity. And
And it's a marker of
femininity.
femininity. Yes,
Yeah.
it's very much a marker.
yeah.
Why don't you switch to breast milk? Have you thought of that? Because I bet you wouldn't have any intestinal issues.
I'll think about trying it if there's extra. Throw
I
in
bet
my
it would.
throw in my tea. I'll have to check if it has gums and oils though. So I can't have that. All right. Well, that's all.
All right. Well, I'm glad you had a great weekend.
You too.
Yes. Love you.
Love you.